Let's
Go
go.
ahead. I'm just going to adjust my camera, but I think we are live once again.
That's music to the ears of everybody who's been watching. They've been asking about you
Oh,
all day. Yeah, they've been like, "Where's Danya?" I'm like, "I've answered this question, but I think everyone will be very happy to have you back." So I see
hearing.
already the cheers are in. People are hyped. But Danya, how was the matchup between Hans and Dubov?
I'm just centering myself, but yeah, I was not sleeping, I promise, although probably that's what Dubo was doing. And I did my absolute best to ensure that everything would start on time, and it did. Unfortunately, I couldn't change the start time, and of course, they had to choose 11 a.m., which not only is the start time of Norwich, but also Title Tuesday. So, of the worst possible start times for a separate event, Hans, of course, conscientious as ever, managed to find the absolute most inconvenient, but it was totally smooth. The games were good. First time ever I'm commentating in two languages on the same day, like I said yesterday. And I'm not talking about the Wesley language. But definitely, commentating in Russian for me is more challenging. I'm sometimes because I like to pretend that I'm eloquent, so I sometimes find myself searching for a word or feeling a little bit nervous. But I've gotten some experience under my belt, and Shimanov is cool. He's no Robert Hess though, so I'm very happy to be back and happy that I get to catch most of the action. Dubov is up by a point after day one. In case anybody's wondering, the score is 5-4. And it's the same format as last time. So 18 games. Tomorrow there will be the second half of the lovely concert, the Symphony of Chess Beauty, that we are privileged enough to get to watch for the second time in 2 months with nothing at stake this time other than honor.
Well, honor is important, and sorry, I'm just tilting my computer a bit to try to get myself
But thank you for
centered and all
covering.
good.
You're the man, and I really appreciate that. That you let me do this. And a big
Of
shout out
course.
to you first and foremost for holding down the fort and tolerating me. But anytime you need a break, even for a day, you have more than earned it. So
Yeah,
you're the
tolerating
man.
you. You're funny. You're funny. But why don't we settle in here? And I see the game is up between Hikaru and Magnus. On the live board, it doesn't have ATIG's B5 included.
Yeah. Now we have the
So,
same on
oh,
both boards.
there's analysis. Okay, got it. So question for you. Earlier, Danya, I mean, you probably didn't get to see this because you were watching and commenting tons of Blitz,
I know
but
nothing
this
about
game,
what's happening. Absolutely. So maybe we
all
can
right,
pretend that I'm like a viewer that's just joined the stream, which is
you
exactly what I
are
am.
You are a strongest viewer, so I do appreciate that. But when you look at this position, right, doesn't it just look like one where white has gone very wrong and black is having an easy time of it?
That's so it feels. I'm going to turn the evaluation bar as we had yesterday, and I assume you had this as well on your end. On the live board, I have the
Yes,
eval bar.
I did indeed.
Okay, so I'm just going to add that in. Now you folks should be seeing the live board. Yeah, I mean, this looks like a rule up has gone wrong. The center has opened up completely, like there's nothing left in the center, which tells us that essentially the evaluation should be decided by the relative piece activity and the relative piece coordination. And if we talk about one side having better coordination, it's definitely black. Let alone the fact that in the event of a trade, we're going to get more nasty threats on the A file, with the rook being undefended and it not being totally clear where white should put this dark squared bishop.
Yeah, that A takes B5, A takes B5, I think we should show that sort of tactic. And you always have tactics in the mind, but here it's a very scary thing that you can't actually easily just take on B5 because bishop takes F2 is a threat. As you mentioned, the bishop on C1 is not really helping out, and especially when it remains undeveloped, it means that your rook isn't defended on its starting square. So Danya, that's just one of many different ideas. Like, am I going totally off the rails if I say that at some point bishop takes F2 check could even be an idea, despite the AB5 not happening?
Yeah, I just came from a blitz match where, despite the surprisingly pleasant atmosphere between the two, and I'll definitely have my, probably during the Title Tuesday stream, I'll talk more about the atmosphere of the match. But the chess was unbelievably explosive. We had some crazy sacks from both players, so nothing is off limits, Robert. Literally every piece can be sacked on every square, and I will give that sacrifice my blessing. I think you're absolutely right. Like, you have to factor this into your calculations. I would add, from a more positional standpoint, something like knight d to f4 could be a really nasty complement to these types of threats, with a knight jumping into f3 to d3. So what this is telling us is that white has to take action like right now. And so that would then lead me to a question, Robert. Maybe you can provide some insight. What actually happens if white tries bishop g5, followed by an attempt to just liquidate as much tension as possible with knight e3? What would be your response to this move?
Yeah, bishop g5, it connects your rooks, knight e3 then to challenge black's knight in the center. But I think bishop g5, queen c7. And I know you were commentating a blitz match, and this isn't that, but it feels like black can almost play like it's blitz. The moves are easy, free flowing. Knight e3 can always be met by knight to f4. These types of positions, Danya, just feel so much simpler to play from the black side. And look at the bishop on a7, the bishop on b7, the queen next to it on c7. All of those pieces are staring across the diagonal. And, if you're not careful as white, watch that queen land on g3. So if you play a move like knight g4, can you make a move like knight takes h3 followed by queen g3?
Not just can, but should, and the game will not last much longer. In fact, the moment Magnus's hand would touch the knight on f4, and this is the kind of position Hikaru would just abandon any further attempts at defending. But this is such a nice illustration of the power of the bishop. We always refer to it as a long-range piece, right? There's these like cliches, and some of them should not be repeated by commentators who are looking for something to fill the silence with. Some of them really should. Like, some of them are crucial aspects of our understanding of the position. And the fact that these bishops are able to exert such influence from a position of complete safety and protection gives black such an important trump card over white in this position. White's bishops are doing no such thing and are not coordinated in any meaningful way. But lovely, lovely idea. Can't take the queen because of the pin. And the other bishop will have its moment in the sun once the knight is captured. And all of white's pieces, including the king, will follow shortly thereafter.
Just feels too easy, Danya. I mean, the tactics that we're walking into help black's cause, but even in that starting position, if we don't make any sort of obvious or intentional blunders, how exactly is white dealing with queen c7, rook d8, knight f4? All these moves just like happen so quickly, and there's very little it seems that white can do about it. I mentioned earlier the move bishop e4, and I paused everyone, Danya. I think this is something that you do often. We're like, what would you suggest, and why is that maybe not the best? A lot of people said knight takes c3, which is a good idea, but doesn't work, because at first some of the audience thought b takes c3 is more or less forced. You capture me, I capture you back, but that wouldn't work out for white, because the bishop on e4 is an LPDO, loose piece that drops off. So knight c3, queen takes d8. If we change the move order, that's the key, and the bishop on b7 would be a goner at the end. So just the tactics, you want them to work. You're often sort of influenced by what the evaluation bar says. But here, instead of knight takes c3, Danya, right, f5 is just brutal for white to deal with, because the bishop is kicked out of there right away. Taking on d5 certainly doesn't help matters after the queen takes back, and the bishops still are monstrous pieces.
And sometimes a move like f5 is something that you want to provoke. But just saying, oh, I've provoked weaknesses on the king's side. Okay, congratulations. Here's the medal that I give to people who've provoked weaknesses on the king's side. And what do you do now? How do you like exploit the e6 square? How do you exploit the fact that like the knight on g6 is only defended by one pawn now? You can't. Your pieces are too passive. You don't have the firepower nor the coordination to exploit any of that. So I think Hikaru very much senses the danger. Even having just joined the party late, I think I can see from the time usage, with 41 minutes on the clock, he is taking large swaths of time trying to solve these sudden opening problems, which these opening problems are not impressed with his victory over Fabiano Caruana and do not care for his status in the chess world. This position is just as annoying whether you're a Hikaru or a casual park player, or and even more annoying if you're Daniel Naroditsky. In fact, I don't know if I'd last another 10 moves here against Magnus. I see a lot of people in the chat pining for the Gukesh game. Shall we continue our tour for the uninitiated of the happenings in round 2 of Norway chess?
Yeah, let's do it, especially because you mentioned the word tour. We might see a bit of a Knights tour in that game, as Gukesh, he's been in trouble since the start. Look at the clock when you tune into this game, Danya, because you haven't seen it until now. Arjun's up an hour, and he only started spending time a couple turns ago, and he's just made
Mm.
another move that has to cause Gukesh some concern. Can you just go back, please, to the moment move 17 castle for white, if you don't mind.
Well, first of all, I'll say that the Nimzo Indian with G3, the last time I saw this played by a current world champion was a certain Carlsen Niemann game from a certain Cup of the Sink Fields in a certain year, a couple of years from now. And I actually saw this morning. Well, actually, I did. That's who I was watching. So Dubov was fianchettoing his bishop a lot on G2. But you asked me to go to move, I think, 14 around the time this happened.
Yeah, move 17, but it's around the same thing. This,
Okay.
just getting to the position where white castles. What's so instructive about this game is we were, as myself in the chat, looking at ideas with the knight coming to e4, the rook coming to a4, the queen coming to e4, all this kind of stuff. But look at what Arjun does in this game is he castles. When black plays b5, he takes en passant, which is natural and kind of mandatory. He
Mm-hmm.
didn't want to allow black to establish that protected c4 pawn. And then he brings his knight to e4. That was natural as well. But then after the king protects the pawn and doesn't allow a fork on f6, g4. Like that's just such an awesome move to play. You're showing all sorts of forks that could have happened. But to play g4 when you've just castled your king, that's the sign of a fantastic tactician, but even more so of a player who has tremendous understanding. That the knight on e4, yeah, that's a good centralized location for the piece, but h5 is a killer. So what my coach Miran Shera always termed dream moves and dream squares, that h5 square is a dream for that white knight. And it was on d2, and that looked like an impossible journey. But by playing g4, you vacate a retreating square for the knight, and knight h5 is going to hurt. It might not end the game, Danya, but it's going to cause black some serious problems.
Well, coupled with the extra hour that Arjun has on the clock and just the general sorry state of black's position, that to get taken together might end the game, although Gukesh is determined to stay alive as he activates his queen, trying to he cannot fully counteract the pain, as you said, that this move is going to cause, but he can try to take the immediate sting out of it. And the immediate threat that knight h5 created, of course, was the capture on f6, which black simply could not allow. I also think he's trying to discourage Arjun from playing f2, f4, either in this position or at a later point. If Gukesh had not put his queen on e5 and f4 had occurred on the board, the queen might not have been even able to join the defensive effort in any meaningful way. So like that ship would have sailed on the very next move. I think that was a great description, Robert, of what it actually means to feel the position. I think this is another one of those cliches that is repeated. Like he has a good sense of the position. He feels these types of positions. What does that actually mean? And what it often means is being able to understand which factors are the most important. Because at the top level, almost every big decision is going to come with strings attached. It's going to come with a price tag, and G4 is no exception. It weakens the king's side. It's not a move that, like you would make just based on the weaknesses it creates. And yet, to feel the position means to understand that the dynamic factors here are more important than the positional drawbacks. And having sung the praises of white's position, it's actually time to figure out a way forward. Do you give the check on h5, or do you do something more subtle, such as even king h1 maybe to prepare f4?
That is extra subtle. I wasn't expecting you to say king h1, but I like it. I mean, that takes away the follow-up check, and it may put the question back to Gukesh. But I'm a bit worried that if white doesn't seize the moment, that you might just allow bishop b7, trading pieces, the rook on b8 gets back into the game. Not that white is really in danger of being worse, but maybe it doesn't allow you to capitalize the way you'd want. So king h1 makes sense to me. Are there any other candidate moves that maybe rook f to d1 because I like my rook on the a file? Does that move speak to you at all?
Well, you just spoke the move aloud, and now it definitely speaks to me. Another move that potentially could be considered is the immediate f4. I mean, sometimes Dvoretsky, he was really the one who brought the concept of prophylactic thinking to the eye of the general chess public. Like asking yourself, what is the underlying idea of your opponent's move? And one of them is to meet f4 with queen e3 check. So prophylactic thinking would indicate a move like king h1. Then Naroditsky came along, and he advocates for anti-prophylactic thinking. Sometimes actually literally, quote unquote, falling into the trap, allowing your opponent to execute the main idea, can be surprisingly effective. So, Robert, the upside of f4 is that after king h1, the threat of knight h5, which is a rather devastating one, is renewed. So black would have to find some way either to seize the initiative quickly or find an alternate way to protect the f6 pawn. But something tells me f4 has to fail here. There's just no way.
Yeah, the queen e3 check that you're, talking about is the only move, so that makes it obvious.
Can we put
And then
this on the board?
go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
But so what is the follow-up? Because knight h5 looks really annoying. I see you drawing arrows, rook d2, queen b1. But like rook d2, I guess rook d2 takes the sting out of a lot of knight h5 ideas because there's, first of all, an attack on the white queen, but there would be attack on the white king if e2 were to ever drop.
Yeah, I mean, this gets incredibly chaotic. And like you said, even if you deliver this check to h5, the king could evacuate toward the center. And if there is a way to avoid this, if there is a way to maintain a relatively low risk profile, I think Arjun wouldn't want to invite this counterplay to his front door, which lends even more appeal, I think, to your idea of rook a d1 because it fully shuts down all of that nasty d-file counterplay. Not only does it prepare something like f4, it adds another source of tension that black has to worry about along the d-file.
Oh, you're gonna laugh, Danya, but I think this shows the difference in our style. Because you said rook a to d1, still thinking aggressively. I said rook f to d1. No, but I was thinking positionally. I'm like, okay, my rook on the a file, that's a fully open line. And I would love to play rook a7 at some moment if the d7 rook goes away. So I do think that both moves look appealing, and it's just a matter of taste. You were leaving the door for f4 open. I was leaving the a file open for that rook on a1.
Yeah, I think it reminds me of this moment. I was doing a React video with Just.com, and I did one of the phrases that I was supposed to comment upon is something Eric Rosen says, which is treat every blunder like a gambit. Have you heard, like, by any chance, that phrase before?
Nope.
I hadn't. Like, I'd heard it for the first time. How would you interpret it? Like, what does that mean in, like, 2 sentences, in your opinion?
That if you are making a mistake, just act confidently and just seek the initiative because you're down material, so you need to compensate
thank the
it somehow.
Lord. Okay, now I feel a little bit less gaslit. So I interpret it as if you have just realized that you've made a serious mistake, don't lose hope. Pretend that you've sort of tell yourself the story that you've sacrificed the piece, and sometimes that allows you to see. You know how sometimes you like do blunder and then it turns out that it works out. Like Hikaru every Title Tuesday. Oh, I blundered. No, I'm brilliant at chess. This actually works out in some miracle 20-move line. It turns out that Eric Rosen had intended this completely in the opposite direction. Like, it's one of those like optical illusions where you see either a young woman or an old lady. And he meant it as if your opponent blunders, rather than immediately like taking the piece that he seems to be offering, in order to make sure that you avoid traps, pretend for a time that that blunder is a gambit, look for any hidden tricks, and only if the coast is clear, proceed with what you think is the refutation. And people in the comments were spamming this like it's obvious, but to me, like, the interpretation that I arrived at was like the only natural, and I wasn't even thinking in that direction.
But is the Kosti-Kavutsky ever clear?
Is the Kosti-Kavutsky ever clear? Wait, this was Eric Rosen.
I know, but I'm just throwing in another very educational.
Oh, coast is clear. Oh my god. And also,
this is what happened. This is what happens. Okay,
I don't think
this is what happens.
I'm just surprised you knew what that was.
And this is what happens when you join the stream late. Your pun game is a little off. I was just trying to welcome you back, showing you some love, and yeah, we just I think missed that boat together.
Well, what are the pundits in the chat saying?
They're just saying not obvious whatsoever, just like that Eric Rosen saying.
Yeah, commentate the games. Like more chess, less yapping.
Well, I guess the question someone asked, which is a very good one, and I'm going to be honest, I didn't calculate it very deeply. In this game, in this moment, knight h5 check, the response apparently is king f8 rather than king to g or h8. So they're asking, like, what happens? What the h7 pawn drops? Why is this not a problem for black?
Yeah, I don't know why I didn't mention this, but I was going to ask, like my first question is going to be: is there a downside to like exposing your trump cards right away? And oftentimes, as like GMs, we're taught by like the book of how to be a GM to like, again, threat is stronger than its execution. If you have a move like knight h5, you want to keep it in your pocket until the moment is right. But maybe this is one of the exceptions where you actually want to make the king commit to an evacuation route before you decide on a concrete subsequent course of action. And maybe the problem with king h8 is the aforementioned f2, f4. Position is so hard to get a hang of that, like, I can see why Gukesh is down an hour. I can totally understand that.
F4 does look worse though. Like F4, Queen E3 check, Rook D2. That's gonna hurt. Like Queen takes E2 will threaten mate.
Ugh. Yeah, no, you're right. It looks disgusting. Disgusting.
So let me quickly check because it's a really instructive, important line, and I'm just wondering. I'll just look into it here very quickly because knight h5, king h8. It says just rook fd1.
Oh, now. So Robert Hess was the closest, surprise, to the truth, to the essence of the position.
The Hessence? Nice.
The Hessence. Oh, my God. You're on fire. I wasn't ready to jump in. What have I gotten myself involved in here? I need to uninvolve myself from it.
I'm just still trying to work out. I'm just trying to work out this line. It's just like,
Okay, take it. I take it.
So is the point that the black king in the corner, there's back rank checkmate ideas. By going rook f to d1, you're ready to take over the a7 square and pose some additional problems. And black can't actually attack anything in white's position, at least anything meaningful. And so that, and the knight h5, by the way, protects this pawn f4 push. So,
whoa,
it's a lot going on.
You want to see a concrete line where you can see the benefit of putting the f rook on d1? So rook a d1, according to the computer, is a slight advantage. This is a big advantage. First of all, if black gives up the d file and tries to trade everything, white has this crucial resource, queen d2. You mentioned it, the back rank. This is a checkmate threat, but it's not the only threat. The queen has two different pathways to paradise, and this is the second one. You go queen h6, you're threatening the devastating knight takes f6. Black is forced to go for the queen trade. And paradoxically, while black temporarily keeps his extra pawn, this is sort of a Pyrrhic victory because what white loses in material, white gains hundredfold in piece activity. And he's going to gain back the material. It's just a matter of time. Black is going to probably lose both of these pawns. The pieces are way too passive, and white's knight can jump into f6 when the moment is right. So that's number one. Number two, where do you actually see the benefit of this f rook coming to d1 is the line f5, which I wouldn't play in a million years, g5, no comment, h6, which I wouldn't play in 5 million years, and now a move I wouldn't play in 100 million years, rook a. I almost want to say rook a7, but there's only one rook that can land on a7. And look at the rooks working in tandem to produce beautiful designs. Check, check, and not a checkmate that you see every day with a knight covering h5 like that. Unbelievable construction here, which would require black to give up an entire queen for almost no compensation.
That is a sick variation. And one more line I want to point out that, taking the rook on a7 wasn't forced. The rook on d7 was protected by two black minor pieces. But after h takes g5, you already made this comment that these queen d2 ideas, they attack along the d file, but they also attack towards the king side. So some kind of rook d7, queen to d2 maneuver, that looks like it's going to hurt black because, well, you're undeveloped, your king's in danger. The knight on h5 is a knife on h5.
It is indeed. Queen takes g5 would be unthinkable to allow. So the lesser evil is to allow this instead, two pieces for a rook. But apart from the material gain, the attack continues. Queen takes f7, not easy to defend this pawn. The queen on e5 is overloaded. And apparently the only move to maintain any chances is f3.
Never play it.
With the obvious idea of getting kicked out of Title Tuesday after g4. And this will get you kicked out of Title Tuesday, that's for sure. Bishop g4 will be met with the rook g8. So white has to take with the e-pawn. Oh, and now the obvious follow-up, king g8. Lest you dare to play such a move immediately and allow the obvious refutation, queen e7. So this gets very quickly into the territory of like impossible computer subtleties. But I think the big picture here is very clear, which is that if white chooses the right path that keeps the most like attacking ideas, that keeps the richness of white's attacking prospects alive, Gukesh with under 30 minutes here is going to have a very unenviable time trying to hold everything together.
I agree. No, this looks like a very challenging position. And Arjun, he's not just trying to punish Gukesh's time management. He's looking for that initiative, that precise continuation that puts the Black King in danger. Let's not forget, Danya, that in his Armageddon win yesterday against Wei Yi, he took that A3 pawn. It felt like, what are you doing? You might get in some trouble on the king side. No, I'm going to take that pawn and I'm going to live to tell the tale. So Arjun is always ready to kind of bring a fight to his opponent. Gukesh is similar in that regard, but the Black King is in danger, whereas the White King is perfectly safe. And so I just want to point out that King H8 apparently was wrong, but Knight H5 check, King F8, giving up the H7 pawn, it looks impossible. But if you play the Sicilian defense, right, some of these positions where you get in like the Richter Rouser and things like that, where the Black King sits on E7, that is possible here. Queen takes H7, King comes to E7, F6 is now defended. You're ready to play Bishop B7 in the near future, and the E2 pawn is loose, the C3 pawn is loose. It's not one-way traffic anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say Gukesh hasn't played the Sicilian since he was a teenager. Oh, wait a second, he's still a teenager, and man, like the once King E7 is played, it's like a lot of ideas. Once they are carried out on the board, and you actually start to adjust your eyes to the position, it looks quite reasonable. Like the king, relatively speaking, is this like a Hawaiian paradise on E7? No, but as you mentioned, like the Rouser structure here. The pawn cocoon is giving the king a lot of protection, making it hard for white to make serious inroads. But to actually play the move King F8, that is terrifying to me because Queen takes H7 creates the illusion that checkmate is essentially inevitable and the king will not escape white's clutches. So you have to look very deeply here.
It's the illusion defense, in fact.
Oh my gosh. Lol, Ita. Yeah, wow.
That was for you. But okay.
That was phenomenal. All right,
I appreciate that. Why don't we pause in this game for a moment? We'll leave Arjun to it and go back to the Hikaru game against Magnus. Because even though there have been too many moves, that the position is changing. And I feel like it's getting increasingly difficult for Hikaru because every single move is passive from him. And look at the lead on the clock for Magnus Carlsen. If he's able to win this game with the black pieces, obviously it's only the second round of action here, but he would defeat the person who is tied with him. Both players won their first round at classical chess. And Magnus winning with black against Hikaru, meaning he gets white the second time they face off in this double round robin, that would be a big issue for everybody in the field. And I mean, Magnus is in great form. All of these ridiculous tales. He doesn't care about classical chess because he can't play classical chess anymore. He can play just fine.
Yeah, I mean, this might come off as a grandiose statement, like one of those like things that's said just to kind of be dramatic. But it seems like Magnus, maybe for the first time in his career, in a certain sense, is enjoying chess. Now, obviously, you don't become Magnus unless you love this game through and through, unless it's your entire existence. I don't mean it in like a superficial way, but it truly feels that he understands now, I have nothing to prove. I can, like he was asked yesterday, why'd you play the Jababa London? And he didn't have some 5-paragraph essay prepared about how he like stayed up all night testing out various openings. He just said everything is bad, so I just chose an opening. And that kind of casual attitude, far from being an indicator that he doesn't care, I think actually works to his benefit. His play is free of the worries and anxieties of having to prove himself, maybe that Gukesh is experiencing. He's not weighed down. So these few months before he becomes a father and is weighed down by his parenting responsibilities, I think are suddenly golden years for the greatest chess player to ever live.
Well, we just saw a father of 3 win an important tournament. Anish Giri took down the Sharjah Masters. So, there are many parents that are playing here. Humpy Koneru amongst them, and she's playing in the Norway Chess Women's section and playing in the lead because she won her first game. Fortunate, of course, but still a win is a win. Donna, the move here, Queen C7. Right? We were talking about this earlier. If provoked, we have Bishop G5, then Queen C7. it's still a great move because you're getting your queen off the first rank, or the eighth rank in this case. The rooks are now connected. You can slide your rook to where the queen just was, and that white queen on d1 sits passively. There's going to be a problem when rook meets queen on an open line. I just feel like Magnus is enjoying this position. How could he not? It just looks so easy to play for black, and every single move for white, it takes some time and calculation.
And it would be so nice if white could get something tactical to work and generate counterplay. But all of that, all of that will, I think, remain behind the scenes. Like, I don't see a single way to get the fire started at all. Like, knight e5 doesn't work. I was testing moves like that. H4, just my hand wouldn't, I just wouldn't be able to, like, send the signal to my hand to play a move like that. It just looks just so flimsy, and it doesn't. It actually helps black because black actually wants to move the knight away from g6 toward f4. And this move is very interesting, right? The like presence of this knight f4 idea, and the fact that black is waiting for white, waiting for the opportune moment to jump in, makes it so much more annoying. Like if white plays knight e3, again, now black will definitely jump into f4, and black has an obvious roadmap on top of everything else toward improving his position. The only annoying aspect here is, I mentioned this in the context of an advantage for black, but the fact that there's this bishop on a7 and it's protected by the rook also weighs down the rook, which has to babysit its newborn on a7. So rook a to d8 would be the ideal way to coordinate your pieces, but that does run into a takes b5. But we do see a fairly
Danya,
drastic measure taken by Hikaru.
I was going to say, there might have been rook a d8 and bishop b8 to follow.
Ooh.
I know a certain game between two commentators where a vicious attack led one to defeat the other. And Danya, I think you know a thing or three about getting a bishop to b8, queen to c7, and going for mate along that diagonal.
But that's the only three things I know. When it comes to positional considerations, that's your baby. Is Magnus's baby now going to be b4?
Oh, this is the big issue for Hikaru. Is he makes one seemingly active move, bringing his knight forward into the center, blockading that bishop on a7, and I wouldn't even be surprised if Magnus says bishop takes d4, saying I'm going to change my ambitious dynamic play for a clear strategic edge. Because Danya, bishop takes d4, c takes d4, pawn to b4. It's very clear that black is with a superior position. That knight on d5. Aaron Nimzovich is happy. It blockades the isolated queen pawn. The bishop on d2. What two bishops advantage are we talking about? That's not a great bishop pair. It's a very passive pair. And that knight on d5 is excellent. A rook can come to d8. A knight still can come to f4 and h4. And you get the picture. This is a dream position for black. He doesn't need to take on d4. I think, as we often hear, right, keeping the tension is better. So b4 right away is the stronger option. But you can, in fact, go for this position. And why would Magnus regret it?
Well, the only question is, is there a downside to maintaining flexibility with the immediate b4? Like, can you have your cake and eat it too? Can you keep the threat of bishop takes d4 while creating additional annoyances for white in the form of, as you said, a potential bishop b8? So there are some situations where I assume keeping the bishop on the board would work out to black's favor. On the other hand, I would be a little worried about the queen jumping out to g4, and now bishop takes d4. Again, that train has left the station. The position becomes a little bit messy, maybe too messy for Magnus's taste. And if you drop the knight back to f6, yeah, you allow a potential queen trade, and bishop takes d4 would lose some of its panache. Even though the endgame, we're not talking about black really risking here. We're just talking about the extent of black's advantage.
That's right. And sometimes these very casual moves can come at quite a sizable cost to your advantage. The evaluation bar drops and you're racking your brain. That looks like a normal move, but now I don't see how to crash through. And the reason why a move like knight d4, John, is a good choice by Hikaru, even if the engine doesn't love it, is it means that he's not just sitting and waiting for Magnus to improve his position slowly but surely. That queen g4 idea that you mentioned, maybe a queen coming to h5 at the right moment, putting pressure on the b5 pawn. All sorts of ideas now that white has. Even if black is better, white's not just sitting patiently and passively.
Yeah, I mean, I was making some Three Musketeers quotes and references during the Neiman-Dubov match, so I'll just continue that tradition.
You are a Dumas after all.
Oh my God. Well, or if you pronounce it in the American way, I think I'm more of that kind of person, as they do in the Shawshank Redemption.
Mm-hmm.
With the S, not silent. But I wouldn't count on it. I think that there's a lot of talk of like dying sitting down. I'm not going to die sitting down. I'm going to die fighting. I'm gonna be the gladiator. I'm fighting just to fight. That's actually how I started my commentary. What is the motivation for Hans to play? Well, as Portos said, I'm dueling just for the sake of dueling. And he's also doing his Duolingo, although that would be me. Hikaru just doesn't have the time to slowly build up his defensive bastions here, Robert, because you mentioned slowly and surely. I would say Magnus would build this up quickly and surely. And don't call me Shirley. Like, Rook 88 is coming. And at that point, Knight F4 becomes essentially a devastating threat. So Hikaru had this, like, one last chance to generate counterplay. It's now or never. And I think he maybe hasn't played the top engine move. But from a strategic perspective, I think Knight D4 is completely reasonable. It's understandable. And at least Magnus now has to deal with, like, concrete ways that White can improve the activity of his own pieces. Like, Magnus actually has to make decisions rather than just keep making obvious, like spamming obvious improving moves and watching Hikaru's clock tick down to 0.
But let's say you continue b4 here, right? Queen g4. And we do try to make the obvious looking moves. Like rook a to d8, rook a to e8. You can fight sort of for either file. I'm not sure. Rook f d8. I don't know. Put one of the pieces
something. It's like Mad Lib, right? Choose one word from the left column. Choose one word from the right column. Okay, rook a to d8.
Yeah, sure. Like, what is White's follow-up?
It follows.
Again.
It follows.
So you're just going to play in this manner. And I was wondering if at some point I can go after your a4 pawn, but that looks like it locks up the position, like a b3 move, and then going for the a4 pawn. But
thank you for telling me there is an a4 pawn, because I was like, I was about to get rid of, unburden myself of some of my other pawns with moves like f5. But
bishop takes d4, c takes d4 now. Like, Black's position still looks really good to my eyes, and I have 4 of them.
Like, having commentated as many Magnus games as I've had the pleasure of commentating, I think he likes flexibility. He likes the tension, right? He likes keeping options open, if at all possible. So if I had to, hazard a guess, would he start with bishop takes d4 and achieve more clarity at the cost of more exciting tactical options, or would he start with b4 and potentially allow Hikaru those extra options? I would probably go for b4. The engine does prefer b4, and by the engine I basically mean Magnus. So not a surprise that it has just appeared on the board. It's been played.
We were expecting this type of move, and I actually do like it more, especially because of that variation we just went down. Bishop takes d4, forcing c takes, and an isolated queen pawn isn't going anywhere. So I do agree with you. Magnus likes to pose as many challenges to his opponent as possible, and Hikaru remains passive. He also remains down over 20 minutes, about to be 25. So I think he's in big trouble. And what move are they on, Danya? They're on move 19.
White's 20th move.
Mm-hmm. White's 20th move, and they only get that 10-second increment after move 40. So 32 minutes for 20 moves, that's not a lot.
Yeah, it's like, in computer games, at least old computer games, you have checkpoints. Like if you die at some point, but you reach a checkpoint, you restart the game from that checkpoint. The checkpoint here when you reach move 40 is it's like you start not from the beginning of the game, but you don't get those additional 30 minutes. Normally, when there's a time scramble, you have that light at the end of the tunnel. As Fabiano Caruana can tell you, the light exists, but it's still a pretty darn dim light. And it was not enough yesterday to extinguish the flames of Hikaru's endgame magic.
No, I mean, Hikaru played an excellent game yesterday. Today, he made one mistake. I think we should rewind, if you don't mind, Danya, back to move after 12, knight takes d5 for Black, because people have asked, and I did mention it earlier, but it's nice to reiterate where this game turned in Black's favor, that on move 12, after knight takes d5, Hikaru responded by pushing his own central pawn, and that was a huge mistake, because then Magnus was able to press forward, gain space, and it's ground that has not given back.
Yeah, if I think about it, like Hikaru actually is kind of an expert in these types of lines with the black pieces. So you would think that he wouldn't be worse out of the opening with white, and yet you're saying he prematurely release the tension with e takes d5. I wonder if he confused like, was this a problem with preparation, or like a conceptual underestimation of black's play? Or did he miss a specific move like c7, c5? I actually could see myself missing this because your brain is kind of like, oh, it blocks the bishop, but it actually forces the knight away and allows this like rapid expansion. And of course, the bishop is shortly thereafter reopened with a great benefit to white's position, to black's position.
Yeah, it's easy to mistake your lines and just think you're in a variation that you're not. But now that we've seen a couple moves made here, queen to g4 is on the board. So this looks like exactly what we've been talking about. And now the continuation here, it's entirely up to Magnus. I mean, he can choose which file to put his rooks, but Hikaru is the one who is going to be groveling for equality.
Yeah, I mean, knight f6 is sort of an instinctual desire to force the queen back. But again, this has been a refrain that we've kept repeating. There is no hurry. Right? White doesn't have concrete threats.
Andy do refrain?
Oh my gosh, you are the king of literary references today.
You did make the Shawshank Redemption call earlier, so I'm just taking
Best
one from
movie
your
ever.
book.
I mean,
It is
ready or not.
fantastic.
But the queen is certainly out of prison and announces its presence here on g4. But the move knight f6, you want to time it right. And that is what motivated my desire to put a rook on d8. Like, if I had to choose a rook and I had to choose a central square, rook fe8 looks a lot less, I don't know, carries a lot less pizzazz to me than rook a to d8. But sometimes Magnus, he's Magnus for a reason. And we should also mention that the move b3 could come as a rather unpleasant cold shower. You pointed it out in the context of isolating the a4 pawn, but it could also disconnect white's rooks because bishop e4, not an accessible square due to knight f6, and bishop f5 can also be very scary because the bishop kind of runs out of squares on that diagonal quite quickly. Nasty, nasty stuff for Hikaru here.
Not easy move to move for Hikaru. He's doing his best, gaining some activity, but it looks like Magnus is in charge both on the board and on the clock. And Danya, I'm just looking around, just seeing how other players are doing. If you don't mind, I think it might make sense just to very quickly. I didn't even bring it up earlier because it was very equal. The game between Sarah Kadem and Ju Wenjun. We will just jump just to update everybody, keep them alerted to the ongoings elsewhere. But that game I thought was just purely equal. And now that I look at it, they changed it today. So you might just have to go through
I see. There we go.
Like that tab that shows all your games open at once. But anyway,
I don't even have to switch to events. I just realized. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But this game was very equal earlier, and now it got chaotic just out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, we saw some crazy happenings in the women's section yesterday. Vaishali losing tragically. Speaking of like getting chaotic out of nowhere, losing that with black after such a consecutive, such a classy positional game to Humpy Canaru, the veteran. And maybe similar vibes here. As the last move by Sara, h4, a clear indication that she wants to avenge her Armageddon loss to Anna Muzichuk yesterday. Although what a save it was in the classical. And this came out of a Queen's Gambit decline? Seriously?
Yeah, it was just completely a
like
dry
this
game.
Position and the current position are the same game.
Yes.
So this is basically a draw for the move knight d4. It's basically a what is it? A wordless draw for?
Mm-hmm.
But now we get the imbalance. Mm-hmm.
I thought when I actually tuned into that moment, I thought it was just going to be Sara playing for equality, and then black is better in the next few moves. And I think that Ju Wenjun is going to regret one decision in particular as we continue here. Black has the outside pass pawn potential. You often see this in Grunfelds and other openings of that nature where it's 2-on-1 on the queen side. But b6 to b5 coming up, I just don't really understand it because the a4 pawn is a weakness. And allowing white to trade that off so easily, it feels like it just kind of hands the opportunity to white to shore up all of her weaknesses at one move because a4 is the weakness. Trading it off for your protected b6 pawn, that feels like a pretty sizable mistake.
Yeah, it hands the opportunity to white, as you said. B5 gives a nice little tempo. Maybe rook d1 was missed. I mean, sometimes you play h6 and the part of your brain that deals with back rank mates sometimes is just like shut off. And that is what explained this incredibly weakening move g5, because I was like, what could possibly explain Ju and Jun's decision to play such a move on her own volition? But she just didn't want to get mated. And the problem with g6, I guess, is bishop takes g6. Yeah, nasty stuff. And Sarah is like, absolutely, thank you for providing another target for me. Yeah, it feels like white holds all the trump cards here, but maybe black can use concrete moves to neutralize the initiative. Like maybe queen c5 just forces the queens off the board. It's clear, though, that Ju and Jun is not going to be happy that she is the one who has to be careful in order to hold the draw. Not in her horoscope today, but maybe in her horoscope.
I knew you were going to make that joke, and well, yesterday was a very bad day for her because Lei Ting-jae just crushed her in that Armageddon game. That was a one-sided affair. So Ju and Jun, she'll have her work cut out for her. If she wants to win this tournament, she's going to have to get some classical W's along the way, but she is the women's world champion and obviously capable of getting that done. But let's move away from this one. I mean, I saw you accidentally moved away, but let's do it intentionally because this game still looks like it's heading towards an equal result, but maybe some other games have more life to them.
Yeah, who knew like trying to plug my phone into a charger would trigger like an entire chain reaction? But speaking of chain reactions, I'm not speaking about chain reaction at all. I think I will be speaking about Fabiano's game. Do you think we should pay him a little visit?
Why don't we? Because that game was really complicated. That game. Like, look at the position now. It doesn't resemble at all what was happening earlier. And so you're going to like this, Danya. I think we can just very briefly revisit what move was it? It was move a6 for black. So that was turn
9.
So after bishop a4, if black played b5 there, which seems like a very natural follow-up.
BC or something?
Yeah, BC, BA, and then CD4. And the engine actually said that black is better after bishop C8. But I think you can. I think you can.
I do like it, but yeah, I didn't. That was unexpected, or expected rather.
It's a fun one, but you can understand why Fabiano did not want any part of this. This looks very scary for black.
Yeah, he didn't want to attract any attention to his thought process, or share his chess-based game history. I mean, a5 bishop. Yeah, actually, the point of bishop c8 here is very obvious. It's to prevent, unlike other instances of bishop c8, it's to prevent d5. Because white will develop this massive attack down the e-file. But I can totally understand why knight g6 was played here by Fabi to open up his pieces a little bit. And now we got a complete transformation of not just the structure, but the material imbalance. We see bishop c6 cd. They set the world record for the number of consecutive captures. And now the bishop is fianchettoed. Okay, exclamation mark. Like, what was it suggesting? Give up, blunder the rook? Like, what was the other candidate move? Like, bishop e3... Like, wow, what a great move. Yeah.
I actually turned it off somewhere around here because of these exact reasons. It's like it's the only move that doesn't lose, so that's why it's gets the exclamation
and queen
point.
b2 would get you kicked out of the tournament, so in a sense it loses. Yeah, queen d7, knight develops to a3 in order to not probably impede the bishop's uncontested control here, and of course the knight is hopping into c4 as it does in the next move, and now brazen decision by Wei Yi. I'm not talking about g3. That move is reasonable. You're restricting the knight. We talked about this yesterday, right? Like playing the move g3 without having a bishop to fianchetto. But the move f4, inviting even more complications because we clearly haven't had enough chaos this game. And inviting moves like queen h3 with 20 minutes on your clock, man. Well, that's why he's in Norway chess and I'm in Charlotte commentator chess. Which I much prefer.
I'm wondering if part of the reason he played f4 is because he's played ambitiously from the start. So he's in that mentality of like, I have to press forward. My bishop on b2, it wants to stare through that pawn on e5 over to g7. There might be some attack brewing. But the white king, which is castled, and castled kings often mean safety. There you go, Danya. I like what you're pointing at. f5 is, that is a brilliant move because...
Immediately.
Go ahead.
Immediately.
I think f5. I think immediately f5 because there's tactics on that b5 diagonal and the queen on e2, rook on f1. Those pieces may be problematic.
And you like when defense turns into offense. I think this is a perfect example of that. White also considers himself to be in the driver's seat. And we know that opposite colored bishops favor the attacker. I think Wei Yi, sometimes that kind of mentality turns into permanence. You think you're permanently attacking, you've got the initiative permanently. But f5, if things turn around, it's going to be black's uncontested bishop that plays the role of vicious attacker. And let's understand what actually happens if white, plays in the most straightforward way imaginable. E takes f5. Do you take back?
Yes, for sure.
I take, and you don't mind the queen trade, I assume.
Well, black certainly can't be worse after a queen trade, but how much better black is another question.
Au contraire, yeah, I actually think it's funny. Like this kind of may seem to undermine my point, but with the rooks on the board, I really wouldn't feel all that safe here either if I'm white's king. Like maybe f5, but it feels icky.
Yeah, because f5 black and castle.
Oh yeah, you can castle. That is a legal chess move. Was that just invented overnight? Like I forgot about that one.
Just some freestyle ideas coming your way.
No, that would be the king from a8, like moving to h8 and calling it castles to the left.
Yeah, Diane, these positions are funny because objectively, I'm sure this is still well within the drawing balance, but this kind of position is incredibly shaky for white. Like the f5 pawn is on a light square, only black has a light square bishop. The black king is tucked away on g8. That c6 bishop with a rook d2 coming, maybe next move. I think that black is likely to win a pawn here. Whether you can win the game from that spot is another question, but you're playing with zero risk whatsoever, and white's in some danger.
I'll tell you this, that my instinct here was to precede the move f5 with a preliminary queen jump to h3. And in an ideal world, which wouldn't occur on the board, Fabi is not known for his cooperation skills with his opponent, unless we talk about yesterday's game. I was trying to induce rook f3 and only now play f5. The problem with this, of course, now I see that there's g4 possibilities because we don't have enough pawn tension on the king side, clearly. What do you make of this line of thinking, or does white have something more convincing here?
Whoa. Queen h3 with the immediate threat, obviously, if queen takes pawn, that's hanging there. But can rook f3 is just wild. I think my nature is to try to find a more kind of calm way to deal with it, but I can't move my queen because the d3 pawn is loose. So rook f3, I guess, by force is required, but that looks shaky.
Yeah, f5, g4.
Queen h4.
And here the commentators abandoned further
No,
analysis.
but it looks good for white. I mean, g4 is such a nasty move.
Hey, I mean, inspired by Dubov, that was the game-winning move in his first match against Hans. And what, some sort of like knight g2 at some moment?
Yeah, just gf5.
ef4.
Knight g2, as you said. And I mean, this has to be great for white, right?
I love this pawn structure. Architecturally pleasing. Black's pieces just bite their teeth against this beautifully constructed pawn chain that emerges out of nowhere. Like suddenly you have these three pawns and they're protecting everything, and black is left without any attacking potential here. You're absolutely right. Queen h3 is tempting, but it's just more Naroditsky one-move-itis.
I mean, that plagues us all, not just you. It's contagious, but this type of position is one where both sides can go wrong. I mean, queen h3, rook f3, I don't actually see the follow-up for black. It just seems like with g4 on the docket and the e5 pawn being loose, maybe this queen h3 move is just asking for a little too much.
Yeah, I mean, I think Fabi is helped by the fact that there aren't too many alternatives to f5. Like bishop b5, another good example of one move-itis. What is the follow-up? Why are you moving the bishop from a square on which it ultimately will become the hero of the game? Very important to resist these temptations to make a move that gives you a very momentary rush of dopamine. And then once the threat is defended against, you're like, can I have a take back, please?
No take back two for you. Can I ask a question that may be silly?
Yeah. You never
If
ask
queen
silly
h3,
questions.
rook f3, as you mentioned, e takes f4.
Mm-hmm.
What's the follow-up there? Because gf4, queen takes h4. I don't believe that black is happy to win this pawn. but I also don't see the exact way for white to continue.
Yeah, just you wait until Title Tuesday. I think someone will demonstrate. Someone more capable than I. So G4, the old idea, it doesn't carry the same power, I guess, after Queen takes H4, right?
Right.
And throwing in Bishop G7 probably counterproductive as well because of Rook G8.
Yes.
Um, huh. What about Knight D5?
Wow, that's a
The Dania move.
well, 95 bishop takes d5
ED.
and f takes g3. I think that I have queen h2 check to always save myself
No,
if
but
needed.
but even in endgame, I think position very complicated. I mean, I can play some Rook E1 here. When you're not sure of the move, just precede it with the word some. Like it's like some Rook E1, like as though there's a Rook E1 has a twin double.
You're gonna like this move, castles kingside.
Oh, and you with your newfangled traditions again. Bishop takes G7.
No, but what are you going for?
Your face? I don't know. Queen E5 check.
No, I see that, but even queen h2 check, like there's no way black is worse here.
In that end game, like takes takes takes
Yeah.
takes takes.
Yep, take everything. Black's not worse.
Yeah, I mean, so neither is white, and I think together that makes the draw. Is that
Yeah.
when neither black is worse nor white is worse?
Sound logic.
Yeah.
Ooh, great suggestion. At that position where you went knight d5, rook takes d5 might be a hurtful one for
And
white to deal with.
from whose erudite mouth came this suggestion?
Tayeb 999.
Okay. And to Tayeb belongs the credit. Wait, so bishop takes d5. What if I go rook e1 again, castles?
Yeah.
Okay, in my advanced stage, I just need to be reminded periodically of certain things, on like a repetitive loop,
That castling is legal.
or like the need to subscribe to our Twitch and YouTube channels and support independent content like the one that you're watching.
I gotta give you credit for that. That was,
Integration.
yeah, pretty seamless.
I mean, that wasn't me inventing it. That integration was pretty derivative of other creators.
Nice. You're hitting us with more calculus, aren't you?
The history major is. It's funny. When the score Dubov Niemann was 4-4, I actually lost track of the score and thought Dubov was leading. So I'm like, and with this win, he continues to increase his lead. And Shimanov says, yeah, he continues to increase it, and now the lead is at 4-4. So my humanities bona fides were hotly discussed by the chat, and once again come up as I show my ineptitude in all things arithmetic. Okay, so
Well,
Fabi's still thinking.
I see a comment that I don't believe, so I'm going to quickly check before I say it. Yes, in the YouTube chat saying Hikaru is equalizing. That's not true. Hikaru is much worse still. Nothing much has changed, in fact. But as you said, Fabi, he is in a position right now that is dynamic, and Wei Yi's a very aggressive player, Danya. But Fabi, he's somebody that you cannot afford to calculate incorrectly against because he will punish you.
Yeah, Wei Yi actually played a game, and there's this weird tendency which reared its head yesterday, right? When a very interesting game is played, like Carlsen Gukesh, there's going to be a certain cohort of overeager journalists, fans who immediately call it either the immortal, like Carlsen's immortal, or this is the game of the year, as though there aren't 7 months left in 2025, and as though in your prophetic wisdom, you know for a fact that nothing worth writing about is going to be played in these 7 months. So, but Wei Yi did play an absolutely stunning brilliancy against Lazaro Brazan of Cuba. This was a couple
Yeah.
of years back, and I think at that point is when he landed on a lot of fans' radars. I don't remember the tournament or the circumstances, but it's definitely a game worth looking at if you want to acquaint yourself with Wei Yi's tactical capabilities.
Wei Yi's a beast, and I think I don't want to call it the issue, but he was so young and so highly rated and impressive, and then people think that he quote unquote fell off, right? That's what they say, like, oh, where has he been? He was studying for a while. Obviously, there was a worldwide pandemic, which didn't allow people to play in as many tournaments as they probably wanted to, and obviously, had much bigger effects in the world. But Wei Yi is an absolute monster, has been for a long time, and it's good to see that he's invited to tournaments like this because he's only 25, I think. So he's not exactly past his prime. He is still an amazing player, and he is just an absolute star. And so, I was looking at this earlier today, Danya. So Wei's 25. Aravind Chidambaram is also 25. People are like, oh, this guy, he did come out of nowhere, so to speak, but he's a young player still, and now given opportunities, he's showing that he can hang at that top level.
I mean, as a 29-year-old, yeah, 25 is very young. And Wei Yi literally has been around forever. Like, I commentated that Burzon game when I used to write weekly articles on chess.com. This was like before I started college. So it's like it messes with your mind to think about how long some of these players have been around. The same thing happens in the NBA sometimes, where when someone enters the league at like age 18 and they've played in the league for like 10 years and they're not even 30, it's insane. Like how they can be veterans, like a 25-year-old veteran. Like that, chess is the only realm where that word is used, like unironically, to refer to someone like me when I play like basically any tournament now, where every one of my opponents is usually younger than me, at least by a couple of years.
Yeah, it's just wild. And people are saying, wow, Wei Yi's 25. Yeah, he just was the youngest 2,700 ever and was just an absolute beast in his youth. And then, there's only so much more people can go up. His current rating is very high. It's not, Magnus is 2840, but 2760 is great. He won Vaikonze 2024. That's an unbelievable achievement. So it's good to see Wei Yi playing well. And I see people mentioning Erdomus and others. Yeah, so many great players and happening at a younger and younger age. But okay, Daniel, we see F4, no move yet from Fabiano. Should we bounce around some? We've been enjoying all the games we've seen so far. Vaishali versus Lei Tingzhe ended in a draw, by the way. Not the most exciting game, but I'm
Okay.
happy to go where you feel like taking us, whether it's Arjun,
Yes.
Magnus game. You choose, you steer the ship, and we're happy to join you on the boat.
Well, I've already docked the ship on Arjun Aragaisi Island, which is, I think, the place to be right now. We haven't had a lot of moves numerically, and yet I think big things are afoot, big things are happening, and we need to take stock of those things. Gukesh has spent another half of his available time. He had 29 minutes, now he's down to 14. We remind you that at move 41, you get a 10-second increment, but there's no additional time the rest of the game. You're playing basically rapid against classical. And how did Arjun deal with the complications? He played, after a long think, the move rook 81. So he actually opted to keep this rook on f1, and the reason why was revealed on the very next move. He does carry out f2, f4, which of course was one of the main topics of our discussion. And after rook takes d1, he suddenly fell into what I think is a pretty substantial thing. He's not just thinking which way to take on d1. He is clearly thinking whether to throw in the check on h5, and that actually might be the more interesting question that he has to answer.
Yeah, there are a few things that I'm now thinking about. So, knight h5 check, I would probably keep that up my sleeve. I like queen takes d1 more than rook takes d1 for one particular reason.
Uh-huh.
If you look at the clock, Gukesh is 14 minutes. Queen takes d1 stops bishop b7 because I think queen d6 is a problem, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like black just isn't able to trade off the pieces that he wants. And with more pieces on the board, there are going to be more tactics, and that's going to be a struggle to continue accurately when you are down so much time.
But there's a crazy idea here, which I'm trying to make heads or tails of. Like, let's just take a random, well, semi-random move like before. I thought that it's a foregone conclusion. Rook f3 is a threat, right? It traps the queen. And suddenly I'm like, wait, but what if black plays this insane right post knight e4? And the point, of course, is if you take my queen, not only do I win back the queen, but the knight beautifully evacuates white's side of the board with interest in this case. Of course, white would have a check on h5, and black cannot step back to the 8th rank as long as the bishop is on c8. If you develop the bishop, maybe that's another pro of developing the bishop. But Gukesh would have to be a real pro here to avoid losing his king. maybe stepping onto h6. Now, maybe this is a moot point. This is probably not important to our discussion. Definitely white is winning here. And so rook f3 at the very least is something you have to contend with. And I think based on those reasons, mostly based on the fact that it earned Hess's seal of approval, queen takes d1 was played and immediately met with knight d7, just opening the evacuation route for the lady.
And protecting f6, so knight h5 check no longer wins a pawn on that f6 square. Great find there, and I'm not just saying it because of the exclamation point. Like retreating moves in the defense are really difficult, and queen d6 is now met by queen c5, so you've opened up that square for a queen trade. A multi-purpose move, really nice find by Gukesh. And Danya, you are such a dynamic player. You love positions like this. I do want to note that black doesn't really have a next move because bishop b7 is not possible. The knight on d7 needs that bishop as a defender. So queen c5, I guess, is kind of an idea for black. But besides that, I don't see the clearest of plans. Maybe pawn to b4 as you're highlighting. So it just goes to show that there's no like critical move from black on the next turn. So can white do something to try and increase the pressure while black doesn't have the most potent follow-up?
I think you're asking exactly the right question. I also think it's worth complimenting both players who have now both come up with a star retreating knight move. White, of course, had this lovely maneuver, which culminated in the knight reaching the seemingly unachievable g3 square. And shortly thereafter, it's Gukesh making a defensive retreating move in order to overprotect this pawn. Now, I'll tell you what I would play in like 3 hours from now. If this was a Title Tuesday game, and I will have 11 of those, so I'll have more than I could possibly ask for. Like g5 would be the move my hand plays without really my brain being involved in the decision, which is, of course, how I make most of my decisions. Do you think it's a worthwhile strategy just trying to blast open areas around black's king to make it a little bit more accessible? Because moves like queen to d6, I don't really know what they're attacking. And you pointed out queen to c5 being an important defensive resource in response. I don't disagree with you that black doesn't have a clear follow-up, but the move b4 does create, let's say, a ticking clock. Like white can't take forever, and I really don't see how white improves his situation on the king side any further. So you might as well. You might as well. You know what I'm saying?
I feel you. G5 is really tempting. I was wondering also about f5, but then I got worried that it wouldn't work out. And wow,
was that on your bingo?
You know what's
card?
funny? It's attacking a knight, so it has a very clear purpose. But that move did not cross my radar because your bishop usually wants to stay near your king on an open diagonal. Is bishop takes d7 even a threat? Because bishop b7 check would be a pretty nasty response.
I mean, it's more of a threat for black, so maybe something like rook b6 can be considered. But that draws the rook away from the 8th rank, opening up possibilities of a check on h5. Let's not forget that that is in white's possession, that resource. Also rook f3. So rook b6 might be met with rook f3, and then bishop takes d7 is very much a threat, with the long diagonal temporarily plugged by the rook.
What a game we have here. I mean,
so complicated, man.
Can you just put that position that we're talking about, like rook b6, rook f3 first, throwing that move in, the whole queen c5, bishop takes d7. Oh, you've pawned e4. I didn't see that.
Well, I didn't either, but nor did I see that black then might have rook d6.
Oh, rook d6, queen takes d6.
What do you mean? Where?
Before bishop b7, sorry. I thought you were saying rook d6 right away.
I was initially, and I did miss queen takes d6, but now that you pointed out starting with bishop b7, let me just point out your very astute observation. White just gets a kingdom and a horse for the queen, and although b4 is not meaningful enough of a compensation.
But queen c6 traps the bishop, doesn't it?
It's like a Naroditsky warm-up problem. Yes, a basic problem to, briefly warm up your intuition. And then it would be framed as like, should black play rook d6 here, or should you start with bishop b7? Suggested thinking time, 3 hours.
Yeah. You know what's funny, though, is these positions are so complicated that even these rook d6 moves, like queen c1 comes to mind, followed by pawn to f5.
Oh, and you're trying, I see what you're cooking up here in your tactical laboratory.
It's just wild.
11 minutes for Gukesh. I mean, I could spend 11 minutes like counting the material and, remembering where I am and what I'm trying to do here and just like identifying the threats. It's not even an exaggeration, Robert. I mean, the time situation, I'm very careful now as a more experienced commentator about overstating its influence on the course of the game. I don't think it's possible to overstate its influence in a situation like this.
It's just such a massive time advantage for Arjun Erigaisi thanks to great preparation. And
Played.
yeah, wow, Rook
You
B6
played
played.
it.
I see the live board. I see that evaluation going up. I see the question mark. So is it just this quote unquote simple? It's a challenging position. Bishop takes D7 here. Is that just the move, or is there something even better?
Well, you're saying immediate bishop takes d7,
Well,
not rook
Rook
f3.
F3. Sorry, in one way or another, this Rook F3 or Bishop takes D. I think Rook F3 first just makes so much sense.
Definitely. It's definitely not bishop d7, bishop b7. Those look terrible. Then you have to play rook f3, and it's a miracle you're not mated.
Right.
Definitely not that. No, rook has to be rook f3. That must be the move. And now bishop takes d7. So is this going to appear on the board? And is black going to start with bishop b7? Wait, did we actually figure out what's wrong with rook d6? You pointed out queen c1. Is that your final answer?
Yes.
And put my Regis Philbin hat on. That just nobody's going to know who that is. Okay, bishop b7. What now?
Oh, I completely missed that move in this position. That's a problem.
Well, I'm good at identifying problems and bad at proposing solutions. But is
No, not.
is it a big
I
problem?
don't like it anymore.
Uh-huh.
I think it is.
Okay, so what's the critical position where white has a choice of moves? It's probably this one, right? If you want to play rook f3. Can you give a check on h5? Like at this point, is that going to help?
Oh, you got it, but not so before Rook F3. There's a one critical difference that I'm now
Uh-huh.
seeing based on your suggestion.
Oh, start with that h5.
Knight H5 first because it prevents King F8. With the Queen on C5, there's no Queen D6 check.
Oh my
But with
god.
so you force the king to, I assume, H8.
Yes, because I don't even want to think about king h6, king g6 walks into like, a litany of nasty checks such as f5. That's like Hikaru. Your point is absolutely worth putting on the board, Robert. King f8 runs into queen d6, and I assume this is counterproductive for black. No, there's no way that Gukesh would allow this. And of course, if you start with rook f3, now black absolutely would play king f8. This is the safest square on the board. Thank you very much. And d6 is protected by black's queen. How easy is it to overlook such a subtlety if you don't have Arjun's brain or the 43 minutes on the clock that he has, or Robert Hess's brain? So let's say king g8 or king h8. What now?
You suggested Knight H5 in the other position and made me think that you don't want to allow the king back in the center. So here, Rook F3, your idea.
Oh, I see a crazy idea. Queen c5.
Okay, bishop takes D7.
Dude, bishop
I think.
b7, bishop c6. How do you like them apples?
Oh my goodness! You have to show them.
With queen d8 coming, regardless of how it doesn't matter how you take, you cannot block the check in a meaningful way.
That is such a sick tactic.
I'm all about the low-hanging fruit. What about rook d6?
Okay, so Queen D6 has the same problem. Bishop takes C8. There's Queen C6 trapping that bishop back there, so we don't want to go for that variation. How about Queen A1 or Queen E?
I'm
Queen
actually
E1 to
Uh-huh.
H4.
Yeah, I'm actually not convinced that position with the down a queen is so obvious, but queen e1, again, using the extra tempo that you're getting to bring the queen to an optimal attacking spot. Let me try this bishop b7 shenanigan again. Can I say shenanigan singular? I always feel like it's used plural. Shenanigans. Like, what if I
You
just
said
one?
you said shenanigan. I was confused. It's like, okay, a single one. I was okay.
Shenanigan, like,
So Queen H4 does not work, I don't think, because the bishop takes F3 check. We should probably show that.
bad commentators, they come in pairs. Or in true, well, more like in quintuplets.
So I think this is bishop takes F3. And then there's rook D1 check and queen G1, and the queens come off the board, and the bishop on D7
Oh
is
my
lost
god!
at the end.
Yeah, it's surprising there's no mate, but it's just as good as checkmate. Yeah, king h3, queen f1, queen e1, force the queen. I mean, even if you didn't see that the queens could be traded, even if you didn't visualize this properly, just understanding that black has perpetual is already enough of a deter. Uh, what is deterral? Detertion?
Deterrent?
Deterrent. Detertion. Detertion. I can't word very well today. Sorry, not my native language. I made that excuse already during the Neiman Duma match. So where does that leave us? Like, where are we in our calculation? We have determined the benefit of starting with this move. Are we at the involved silicon beast part of our calculation?
But I think the line we were just looking at was good for white because we went queen h4 right away. But
Yeah.
in that continuation, let's say you start with pawn to e4.
This position, bishop b7, not queen h4, but you start with e4. I take your bishop. I have to.
Yes, and then I have queen h4 now, and I think is the essential difference that the king can slither out to
That
h3.
There's a word I want to use, but it's a family-friendly stream, so I don't know of any other words, unfortunately, so I might have to use it eventually. And look at this pawn on c3, how it just like is like the unsung hero of
Just not allowing the queen
attack.
to protect.
And no checks. Of course, queen f1 is not a check. That's an abomination.
It's funny though when you can like have all your pieces on the last file because they say knights in the rim are dim and you typically want your piece in the center, but all of the pieces on the H file are doing the damage.
The only dim thing is the people who are saying that in the context of a position like this. Yeah, rules like that, I take exception to that sort of phrasing.
What a wild position.
Wouldn't it be nice to have 39 minutes here just to kick back, take off your, put your legs on the table. Of course, not literally. Figuratively speaking, it's still not enough time. I think Lecco here would be asking for like an extra 5 hours. But it's definitely better than what Gukesh has. The only benefit for him is that his choice is a lot more limited. All he really will have to be choosing between is the immediate bishop b7 or to start with rook d6, hypothetically, in this hypothetical future where Arjun gives a check on h5 and plays rook f3.
What a position this is. I mean, it's so rich of tactics for both sides and so easy to go wrong. But I think Arjun, he's going to have to calculate some more. And while he does so, should we hop back to the Magnus game against Hikaru? Because I think, wow, actually, there have been some huge changes in both that game and the Wei Caruana game. But let's go to Magnus and Hikaru. I think that's where we should.
We should definitely at least take quick stock. And thank you for steering us away because I would have still been looking at that position when Rip Van Winkle woke up. So,
What a reference.
yeah, and is it rip to Hikaru? Well, it's rip to Magnus's time advantage, which he squandered on the mysterious b takes c3, which was roundly disapproved of by the engine, this release of the tension. Knight f6, we mentioned this resource. Just kind of a weird restructuring of his pieces, but what for? What has he gained from this porridge of like decisions?
I just think it's still hard for White to make moves here. Maybe that's his point. That there are some tactics, Danya, with rook takes e1 and bishop takes d4. If you're not looking out for it, the queen on a5 not only does it attack a4 and c3, there's sort of like a pin on that c3 pawn if White's not careful. So queen can come, over to square like d5 eventually. There's just all sorts of ideas here because there's so many pieces, and I see the arrow that you're drawing, and I think it's the correct one to draw. That white queen could be in some serious danger.
Well, Hikaru's probably drawing a lot of arrows in his head. Although something tells me when he's on the bad side of these types of positions, this time I'll use shenanigans in its proper plural form. He's investing his time into more worthy pursuits than cooking up the next recap for his video. I got to give it to him though. Like, he comes back to the room, and when you're playing a super tournament, like with that level of exhaustion to, at that age, to come back and day in and day out without fail, to bring your community and your potential viewers into the loop about your thought process is a great privilege of being alive in, today's chess era. Something that, generations past would not have even dreamed of. And now we just take it for granted. Where's the recap? It hasn't been published. It's been an hour since the round ended. Like, he has to eat too? Jesus.
We are being told, Dinah, sorry, I was laughing at what you were saying, but also reading the chat that there's an Armageddon game going on in the
Ooh.
women's section. So that one's between Vaishali. Yeah, Vaishali and Lei Tingzhe.
Shall we? I can display two games at the same time. World is our oyster here, or we can just
Yeah,
watch the finish of it.
why don't you? We could, yeah, whatever you feel. It's on the little board there. I see
I'm gonna
that.
put it on the small board, and I'm gonna keep the Caruana game on the big board.
But I guess what's the time there? 5.5 minutes for white, 3 minutes and change for black, and black has draw. So we'll remind everybody that black started with 7 minutes in the small board. It's not so small anymore. I see you.
It's getting bigger. It's
Enlarged it.
metastasized. Soon it'll cover an entire landscape.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, this position is one where white needs to win. There are opposite colored bishops, but with so many pawns remaining, it's not just going to be some sort of straightforward path to equality in the board underneath us on the left-hand side of your screen. So fun games all over the place, and that one in particular just has less time than the others.
Yeah, but I'm not seeing a plan of action here for Vaishali. I actually would like to trade queens here. Like, if the queens were removed from the board as things currently sit, I think white would get very serious winning chances connected with all of these pawn targets that I'm highlighting in red. But Vaishali is going to continue to be in the red when it comes to the tournament standings, unless she finds a good way to do that. Now, maybe a2, a4, followed by queen to b5.
Oh,
Unfortunately,
that's
Lei is going to
awesome.
meet that with rook b8, if I understand her thinking correctly.
But that's such a cool idea that you're just trying to trade off the queens in that manner because even though opposite colored bishops they present opportunities to make draws, it's not a guarantee. And maybe white can just continue making slow improving moves and clamping down on the position, Danya, in a way that means that black struggles to find an active idea.
In the meantime, we just have chaos of a particularly like spicy variety in Wei Yi versus Caruana. 10 minutes for Wei Yi. So in many ways, his situation is sort of reminiscent of Gukesh's position, except there's a little bit more clarity here when it comes to things to calculate. Like, at least you can identify a hanging piece, and Fabi can anchor his calculations to that hanging piece. Can he castle? Is that legal? Like,
Ooh,
semi-serious question.
let me check. I see no king moves, no rook moves from that rook. So yes, I believe
Wait, is that
that
the
black
move?
can still. I don't know. Let me check. I just know that you can do it. I'll turn on the. Oh my goodness, it is.
An absolutely serious question. Has Wei Yi blundered it?
Well, will Fabiano find it? That's such like it's such an irregular concept. Like you don't often see a rook staring at another rook and you castle out of that exchange.
Also, online, it's easy to play such a move because it just goes, bzz, bzz, and then you have to, okay, well, I'm screwed, but I can at least choose a different move. Over the board, you're like, I mean, that is not a move that you would not live the embarrassment down if that were illegal, and you'd also have to move your king.
What a
Is
what a
this
concept. But
catastrophic, though, if Fabi finds it? Sorry, go on.
no,
Vaishali's
I'm looking
losing
at
the
the.
thread, though.
I was gonna say you were talking about catastrophes. It looks like Vaishali, who needs to win the game with white, she's the one getting in trouble because black just has an attack brewing here, and the white king's in danger.
Catastrophe indeed, although I'm maybe being a little bit too dogmatic. Yeah,
That
Lei
wasn't
Tingzhe
good.
winning with her pet line. And of course he finds it in the favorite words of a tilted Title Tuesday participant. Tilted Tuesday participant. Of course he sees it.
Of course he does. But I mean, the castle there is an incredible move. I wouldn't be surprised if most players like forgot that it was legal because you can't castle through check. And when rooks are staring at each other, it almost feels like that's kind of preventing you from doing so. But you see the exclamation point there, Danya. Castling is best. And the reason why is that look at that pawn on h4. If you could throw that pawn off the board and play queen h2, we would see an attack brewing against the black king. But with that pawn still existing, there's no attack whatsoever. You're not trading pieces. D3 is hanging in many positions because the bishop on b2 is loose. Black can just pile up more pressure on that pin pawn. Rook d7, rook d8, or queen to b3. Daniel, it looks like Fabi's having all the fun. Plus, he's a big lead on time there.
Yeah, I was trying to get the eval bar to display on that particular board, but it's fine. It's not worth the juice is not worth the squeeze. It's like -2. White is in huge trouble. That's all you need to know. White is in huge trouble on the clock, on the board, and what how awesome would a win be for Fabi's, let's say, psychological makeup and for the tournament standings? With the black pieces, just a win in Classical, get a big 3 points tacked on to his point total. He just needs to drive this one home, as does Lei Ting-Jie. She seems to be doing a fantastic job of that. Let's not forget, White needs to win that position. I mean, even drawing it seems to be daunting enough of a task. Winning it is going to require a board mouse slip. Like a live IRL mouse slip.
Well, it's going to require Lei Ting-Jie doing what Vaishali did yesterday, like making the only move that loses the game from a dominant position. And it seems like Black is doing very well. All she needs is a draw, so I expect her to, and backwards moves.
Oh, my mouth is watering now. Queen C5, Queen D6, and DC. And I'm not talking about our nation's capital, unfortunately, for Vaishali.
Yeah, this is just brutal at the moment because the White King's already in danger and Queen D6 the right square because Queen C5 might have run into Queen E3, which isn't scary, but it does allow White the opportunity to protect that rook with tempo. Here, that rook is under attack. D takes C4 is next, and Danya just feels like it's done.
There's 16 moves to make in a minute. She's also down on time. Feels like 600 moves to make. Yeah. Lei Ting-Jie just controlled this Armageddon. We didn't catch the entirety of it, but Petrov is actually her pet opening, unironically, when she needs to be solid. And, she just knows that opening. She's like the Jan, Nepomniachtchi of women's chess in terms of like using the Petrov as a super annoying solid weapon.
And Lei Ting-Jie's style is one that's not like very solid overall. She really likes aggressive play, and she's doing well to start off this tournament. Winning a second Armageddon. Oof. Is even Queen takes D2 here just like winning for Black?
Yeah, so Queen E7, we talked about this yesterday. We need to take the computer evaluations with a grain of salt. Of course, Rook takes D8. Probably. Okay, Queen E3, just take the Queen. Oh, don't take the Queen. The Rook takes D8. Oh, wait, Queen F8, Bishop A3. And then Black has Bishop takes C2, King A1.
So what about Rook E8 here?
Have we administered the burial rights too quickly here? But then Queen takes C7 and Bishop takes A3, and in a bullet game in the end game? I mean that's the thing with Dianya. I mean, Dianya missing the plot, losing the plot as usual,
So she doesn't miss the plot and makes a good move. Queen F6, and that makes perfect sense to me. Just like keeping more pieces on the board. Bishop takes A3 still is available, but after the trade of pieces and Queen coming to D1, that's a problem.
Just don't go Queen B8 because of Queen B3. And of course she doesn't fall for it.
No, wait, but that's still just, isn't that an A2 at the end? And
yeah, that's still drawing. I mean, which is winning, of course.
Right.
I wouldn't reinvent the wheel here. I mean, keeping the queens on the board contains absolutely no risk. There is, like, H7 is a fortress on steroids. There's no way that king is ever going to be confronted with any serious danger.
That one's done for. I'm also looking at the game on the right-hand side between Wei Yi and Fabiano. It's getting worse and worse after each and every turn. Rook A1, a sad move.
That's setting a trap, though. Bishop D3, Rook H8, I think, is his little shenanigan. Little shenanigan there.
Just that singular shenanigan available.
And that'll be a big fat donut on the cross table for Fabi. He definitely wasn't born yesterday. The man has been in 2 world championship matches. Actually, wait, 1.
Yeah, I was going to say, what was the second?
talking out of somewhere other than my mouth.
And look, a draw, which is a win for Lei Ting-Jie. She steals that. Oh, I don't call it steal. She just earned that Armageddon victory over Vaishali.
Armageddon.
She wins. She simply wins. But for Fabi, that tactic that you're showing, Bishop takes D3, that would be a cold shower, allowing Rook H8 check, a renegade rook. And, whoa, what's going on? Arjun Erigaisi has played Knight H5 and got the Queen to E1, so we have what we were talking about.
I just had to pat Robert Hess on the back. We literally have the position from our analysis. This is on the board. And I think at this point we were starting with Bishop B7. We never got around to looking at Bishop takes D7, which might be the lesser evil. But it's pretty evil nonetheless, judging by the eval bar, which tells us +2. But +2 is a totally meaningless assessment here. I think it's either checkmate or it's not. Like, either White's attack results in tangible, decisive gains, or it doesn't. And I think it is.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Arjun's head-to-head with Gukesh is something like 5-0 in Arjun's favor in classical games. He is a bit older, so I think a bunch of their games happened when Gukesh was, at that point much younger in a significant way, and now they're at the same level. It's not meaningful. But Arjun is +5, five
Okay.
wins, no losses, and 4 draws. I just looked it up according to chessgames.com, and this could be +6 for Arjun given the advantage that he has.
Bishop b7, e4. Okay, all right, well, let's give ourselves. I think the self-congratulatory behavior needs to be kept in check. Just like Black's king will be very, very shortly once the queen lands on h4. Actually, White's king might be kept in check, but not for more than 2 moves. But you did a great job of identifying this evacuation route, which I think is at the heart of Gukesh's nightmares. Not just tonight, but yesterday night as well. We saw Magnus doing something similar, where the counterplay miraculously turns out insufficient. And once it's White's turn, I can't say it better than Magnus's tweet, which was a quote from The Wire. When you fire at the king, you best not miss, I think. Or did I
You
butcher
come for
that?
the king.
You come for
You
the king,
butchered it
you
a
best
little
not miss. Yeah, that didn't sound. That's why I wasn't the screenwriter for The Wire.
Well, it's okay because your butchering is the best since Bill from Kings of New York. So, you'll get all our references in today. And so we're looking. Oh, Gangs of New York. What's wrong with me? You said King.
No, Kings of
Okay.
New York
Too
is
much.
Kings of New York is the chess book.
Yeah, I'm thinking of.
But you know what I mean, the Michael Weinraub book, which nobody else is going to know other than us two, out of the
Yeah, but
six thousand people watching or whatever.
upset at myself because I've ruined a great Daniel Day-Lewis reference, and it's okay. I'm gonna scurry like a bunny and get over it. The rabbits.
Fix yourself an Abraham and cheese sandwich. Okay, I will
Let's
emancipate you from this discussion topic now.
Yes, I appreciate that. So let's look at the boards that we have here. Also, Magnus and Hikaru, the queens are gone. That doesn't mean that 100% of the danger has been removed for Hikaru, but he's actually ahead on time, and Magnus has spoiled the majority, if not the entirety, of his advantage.
Now, for those just joining, we've switched temporarily to our two-board view. Like the left board is usually the analysis board, but we've replaced it with Arjun versus Gukesh. On the right side, the big board, which probably should be the small board, but I think that people will forgive us. That one is Wei Yi, who is crumbling before our eyes. That one is going to take a miracle of miracles, because Fabi didn't fall for the trap. And once the queen evacuates to safety, I think it's time to collect the harvest. Or maybe not
Well,
yet. Maybe start with queen g6, but then you run into rook f3.
Fabi's move was really nice, by the way, because Queen F7 made D3 unprotectable. It looks like you could have, instead of Rook F5, played Rook A3 to protect that pawn, but tactically that pawn was dropping regardless because that Rook on H5, LPDO, loose pieces drop off.
Yeah, that's why you don't try to catch Fabi on a prosaic trap. Of course, like there wasn't much in the way of an alternative. Now, one more question: do you play Rook takes D3, and is there something tactical for Black here? And clearly the answer is yes. Check. But it's not that, because White is better after King H2. Look at that. I think it's
That's
Queen
crazy.
C. I think it's Queen C4 if I had to guess.
That's actually wild.
How can there be no move after Rook G3 King H2? You think, there's some intermezzo, like I can move the Rook somewhere with a threat. Nope. You need to create the threat here because G5 is protected. Kind of like Gukesh's or Arjun's pawn on c3, right? Protecting the right square. And any other move, there's going to be a discovery on top of a deflection, on top of another deflection. And that would lead to a much-needed victory in the second round.
That's some fun tactics there. I mean, fun for Fabiano, not for Wei Yi. That's really cool stuff, that position you just showed. And Fabi, he brought his queen back. He's going to pick up D3. I like that he's not rushing, though. A lot of people just immediately try to win on time when your opponent's down to 5 minutes. They get 10-second increment when they reach the 40th move. And in this particular game, the players are on move 27. Rook F5 was White's 27th move. But Fabi may just win before they hit the increment move number. So I don't think he needs to rush it. Bishop takes D3. E4 will drop soon. Looks great for Caruana. And in the board on our... Oh, he takes the rook on D3. going for all the tactics.
Yeah, very
Yeah,
well done.
like you said, that's good enough with that queen c4 idea, which is beautiful, by the way.
And I think he can't be. My mouse has died, and I currently actively looking for a replacement. Um, but it's so important not to let your opponent, stay in the game. The longer the game continues, just numerically, the longer the game continues, the more of a chance for something ridiculous to happen. And so it's so easy to rest on your laurels and let's just play bishop takes d3 and avoid complications. That's not how the winning is done at the highest level, as we can see.
The winning is not done in this manner, says Danya, which I agree with, by the way. And what I also agree with is Arjun Erigaisi's decision making. Gukesh is down under 4 minutes. There is a knight on f6, a queen coming to h4. Ay, ay, ay.
The winning is not being done by Gukesh either in the first 2 rounds.
He he's someone who's just so strong. Obviously, he's the youngest world champion. But I mean, if he loses a second game in a row to start this tournament, he might feel his confidence shaking a bit. I see Queen H4, which just looks like a great move, and there's all sorts of back rank checkmates that Black needs to look out for with Knight H5, Queen D8 at the end of the variations.
Yeah, I mean, he had the unenviable draw, right? He had the double black. Someone in a round robin always gets the double black to start their tournament. But okay, you lost to Magnus in a combative game. All right, that's something which might have been on your bingo card. But to lose the second game, in dashing tactical style to someone against whom you really wanted to score a statement win, that one is going to hurt psychologically. And of course, it's going to put you near the bottom or at the bottom of the tournament cross table. So the world champion will have some work to do if Arjun can do just a little bit more work and show some technique here. Now, does he trade on d3 first? I guess that's the question that he's puzzling over here. Or do you just go? No, queen h4, bishop e4, though. No, knight e4. That attacks the queen.
And then you don't have time there for like rook d1 check, queen g1. We've talked about these variations before. The white king just gets to h3.
You go for the king. You best not miss. I think I'm just going to keep repeating that because you really can't say it any better than that. And you can't do any better than Arjun, as Robert Hess called it a long time ago. That queen is going to be doing a lot of checkmating from the h4 square.
It hurts. I mean, right now, Arjun playing a great game from start to finish. Have to give the youngster, usually we talk about that with Gukesh, but the youngster also being Arjun Erigaisi, who he's a beast. And I also like that, Donnie, that he's dispelling some of those criticisms that have been like, he can't play in round robins.
Yeah, he accidentally got 2,800. Big deal.
Yeah. Well, it was what happened with Ali Reza as well. Like these open tournaments playing against not the elite players. So to see Arjun strike this early, it must feel really good for him if he or when he's able to convert this advantage. But the game is not over until checkmate appears or Gukesh resigns. And on the other board, I see you pointing, Danya, hovering over that queen on f7 to leap into c4.
Yeah, I'm just like waiting for the endorphin release that's going to follow that move. But Fabi, yeah, he is the consummate professional. He obviously understands that rook takes g3. I mean, these are not the kinds of mistakes that professionals... They make these mistakes once in a career, right? It's like the Hikaru resignation. Now, we make a lot out of the moments when they happen, but that's because they're so rare. And the reason they're rare is precisely because of what we see here. Fabi taking time on every move, calculating to the end, and it's just a matter of, I think, a few more seconds before the score sheets in this game are signed. What a win. And what a quick denouement in this game. It's been 8 moves since Wei Yi played f4. 8.
Yeah, I mean, f4 was just asking for trouble. Sometimes playing to win is really playing to lose, and queen c4 is in fact played. That should do the trick. Danya, should we call it a Danyamon when you are calling the shots?
I mean, that is essential vocabulary for this stream. the quintessential pun from my fellow commentator. And there we go. There's the resignation. And it's all about Gukesh and Hikaru, whose game we haven't checked into in a hot second.
Can I just say something real quick, Danya? Do you
Yeah.
remember yesterday when people are like, "Oh, Fabi's washed. Is he, is he lost it? It seems like he's been on a downturn." And then he suddenly wins with the black pieces and quite a nice game. So I think Fabiano, he's already qualified for the candidates. He doesn't really need to do well in his current tournaments because what he ultimately cares about is winning the World Championship title. But then he beats such a strong player like Wei Yi with black. He's just right back in the thick of things. If he had drawn the first two games, nobody would have batted an eye. But because he lost to Hikaru for the fifth consecutive time in terms of their decisive games, it meant it was the end of the world for Fabi. He just can't play well against Hikaru.
Yep.
I think
Nope.
that's
He's just
really the
that's it.
key.
He's destroyed. He's psychologically destroyed. I mean, these same Twitter luminaries, and I can list quite a few. I mean, they think that all the top guys are like emotional hemophiliacs. They lose one game, and every time they have this huge existential crisis. And then they win a game, and it's the opposite. It's like euphoria, game of the century. Like, it's neither. They're just playing a tournament, and it's just the beginning of the event.
And you say hemophiliac made me want to say nobody makes me bleed my own blood. Nobody.
That's a lot of puns there.
Oh, well played there, my friend. But you know what's not particularly well played, and we definitely don't say this often. Magnus seems to be going wrong in his approach. He has traded queens on in that game, and it seems like Hikaru has been able to stabilize and might even have some chances if Magnus isn't careful. Am I overstating the possibilities here for Hikaru?
No, and I know you're saying that because of the position on the board. I mean, obviously, the eval bar has reflected the reality of the position, which is that if you just showed me this, no question I'd prefer white, and not just in a blitz game where knights are overpowered or knights are OP, as Generation like Alpha would say, but the bishops without their handler are nice. The bishops are still decently placed, but one could even argue that they're more of a target than a strength now. Like the knight can jump out to b4. The other bishop could drop back to e3. So without black's queen to act as the glue piece, white's king is now feeling lovely on g1 to do. Has slithered his way out of the danger zone and maybe turned it back on Magnus, much as he did yesterday against Gukesh. I'm expecting like either bishop e3 or knight b4. I don't think that Hikaru is entertaining any winning chances just yet, but you never know.
Especially given the clock dynamics. Right now, they're reached move 29. They have to get to move 40 to gain 10 seconds per move, which isn't all that much. We saw Fabi struggle on his last minute and lose to Hikaru. Being down under a minute in this kind of position will be very difficult because the knights are actually dangerous pieces that black will have to deal with. And the fact that black's king does not have
Ooh.
any luft, that could be problematic. What do you spot?
There's some. Well, first, I want to actually see the win in Arjun's game. I don't. I've been sort of passively trying to work on the win. And just as I say that, we see moves coming in just as if on cue. And I was going to. Can we switch to that game momentarily here?
Let's do it, especially because there's plenty of time on Hikaru Magnus's clocks.
So that's the small board, folks, on your left, where I've just drawn the two queen arrows. And look at this. It's not checkmate because of queen f8. Is Arjun cashing in too soon, or is this just a completely winning position after the simple queen takes d3?
I think that the roller coaster of the evaluation bar is very misleading. This looks terrible for black, especially considering the time under 3 minutes. Like in this position, knight f6, as you said.
Okay, king
King
g7.
You just have queen d4.
Yeah,
Like,
d2. Knight d7,
Ah.
e5. I want this trick.
but even there, oh, okay, I see what you're going for, which is
Singular or plural? Yeah.
that's actually really some nasty stuff that you're
So,
pointing out.
and queen takes d3, Robert. There is f5. So, world champions have a particular characteristic of never quite, like their flame is never extinguished. They're like a zombie that keeps getting up from the grave. I mean, all top GMs have this quality.
Hold on, hold on. I mean, we would need to actually show these moves on the board
I will
because
put
there's
them on
a
the
lot
board.
happening there.
Let's
Okay,
let's
so
bring it up on the analysis board too. I don't think that anything immediate is going to happen in the Hikaru game. Let's not go too crazy. What do you think about that
I'll
concept.
keep an eye, I'll keep an eye on that game.
In the meantime, I'm going to shrink our live board and once again make it a live board. Give me just a second. And okay. Oh yeah, we need the number. Yeah, we need the number.
You got this.
Okay, I'm ready for some insight once I pull up that game on our big board. Go ahead.
Well, I was wondering what happens after Queen D3 F5. Oh, sorry,
Oh,
instead of Knight F6.
okay, F5.
I was wondering if Queen like I wanted to go Queen D7 at first. I know I'm giving a bunch of checks, but I didn't see the end of the line.
So Queen D7, Bishop E4. Wow, King G1, Queen C5, King F1, and it's like Gukesh Carlsen number 2. Queen C4, and
King
where's
F2?
yeah? So Queen A2. Oh, do you go to H4 and G5?
I absolutely do, yes.
That is okay. Actually, King E3 is an immediate, is just kaput. But what about Queen C5 check?
King G3?
Oh, I thought King E2 and yeah, also King G3. Wait, you mate in 2? Oh, Queen G1, Queen G4. Oh my god.
Oh, Queen G4.
Oh my god. I also was like, wait, white delivers mate in 2? So you have to go King E2 and do this, King D2 and King E3. Ooh, the commentator just made it 2. Wow. Oh, you're so bad, Robert. Oh my god.
That's really funny though.
That is funny. How quickly the smug, the smug white king turns into red meat for the bloodthirsty black queen.
Oof. Yeah, that's so funny because you think of the Queen takes H2, but not Queen takes G4. So blundering checkmate in 1, a specialty, all good. But the point is that the king can run away, and so I'm wondering if white can successfully give up this pawn in the center. And I'm noting that Gukesh has under 3 minutes. I'm going to keep saying it because yesterday he objectively played a strong move in terms of the computer evaluation, by giving up his knight. But then he made a mistake not finding the perpetual check when he didn't have much time. This is a way more challenging position. I think Arjun is doing the right thing by thinking at this moment, whether he plays knight f6 check and queen d4, as you mentioned, whether he plays queen takes d3 right away. This is a big moment for Arjun, and he knows that he is better, and he simply cannot lose. Like queen g5, queen f6 check, at the very least, is a draw by repetition. Not that he wants to do that. So just trying to point out that there's zero risk at this moment for Arjun. He should use his time wisely.
Yeah, he's not worried about losing, but allowing a draw in this game will feel like losing. And I just want to show the other line that we kind of discussed in our heads, which is this position looks resignable. And yet there is this insane idea to play e5, invite the queen further along down the primrose path. And actually, black wins after f6, which frankly I wasn't aware of because I thought the queen could return to d4 and at least white could hold on, but maybe queen e7 and the black queen infiltrates. I mean, it's clear that this should never be allowed by Arjun. And how easy is it to miss a detail like this all the way back when he went down this path in this position? That's where he started the calculation. And the top computer move is insane. It was f5.
What?
f5.
The rook is untouchable because knight d7 check at the end.
Yeah, look at this mating pattern. Knight h5. If the king goes here, you have your choice of the more aesthetically pleasing mate. And here, you actually need to deliver this very important preliminary check, drawing the king away, and so preventing this queen f8 resource that Gukesh ends up having in the game.
But Danya, the thing about this is this whole checkmate isn't necessary because with the knight on f6, you could play queen g5 instead, and the king has to go to f8 to avoid mate, and there's knight d7. So you don't need to see the checkmate through to know that this is winning for white if the rook is captured.
Yeah, but king g7 here. Oh yeah, queen g5. Okay, that's what you're saying. Sorry.
Yeah.
And then you can actually go for the queen. So we have moves coming in. And he goes down the line. Robert, you are the man of the 5 hours today, not just the man of the hour. Not just for commentating solo, but again predicting. And again, I look at the score sheet and I see move 38, and I want to say Gukesh is 2 moves away from making it. Making it to what? A 10-second increment, big deal. Good luck.
No, the 10-second increment is not nearly enough when your king is trapped over there on g8 and done. Something important to mention is that some queenless positions, especially if white can get that pawn on g5, it's just winning for white. Like the knight comes to f6, the h pawn goes, and the light square bishop can't attack a single white pawn. So there are going to be situations where Arjun doesn't even go for checkmate. He says, let's get those queens off the board. You think your king is safe, but the end game is still a problem.
And if Gukesh fails to pull off the unimaginable, then the official narrative of the game, if it is written, with a brain rather than with a computer, should be Arjun converted his advantage more or less seamlessly, maybe not perfectly, but so far it would be completely unfair to say that Gukesh is back in the game. He's got an only move that he needs to find here, which is bishop back to d5, and even then, after g takes f5, how do you deal with that, terrifying number of threats in under a minute?
Like bishop d5, just back because you've cut the white queen off, so then g5 there's queen c5 check and so many checks, and the white king no longer has escape routes. Okay, that's really interesting, and I like your bishop d5 suggestion, but then I also
Well,
like
it's not my
follow-up.
suggestion, to be fair. I didn't cite my sources like MLA style. Stockfish 2025 suggested this move. Gukesh is down to 50 seconds. Uh-oh. It's the
This
witching
is
hour.
really, really just horrible position to have trying to defend when you have no time. Because bishop d5, as you said, only step one. When b5 drops, g takes f5 is an option as well. There's so many things to calculate.
Should I put the Magnus game up? We're getting some requests, but obviously this is where the action is at. Anything crazy happening
Yeah,
on Hikaru Magnus?
there just have been a bunch of trades, and it's a dicey position in all honesty. So we can bring it up. I don't think it hurt. Maybe put it on the live board rather than the big board just for now.
The small board, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to pull up the Magnus game and expand it a little bit here. This is Hikaru Makanura. And Hikaru is going to be one happy YouTuber if he can pull out. If he pulls out a win in the classical portion, I can't even believe we're talking about that, given how awful his defensive task seemed not so long ago. Now they're playing a blitz game, and we could get mutual liquidation in a draw. I think that's the likeliest outcome. We could get something like we did yesterday, where Hikaru does Hikaru things.
Well, especially
And I don't mean
at the
resign.
moment. No,
Yeah, that's
that has
not a
happened
Hikaru
before.
thing.
Yeah, well, I think especially if that knight on d6 continues to pose problems. The f7 pawn, there's going to be some back rank issues that black will have to deal with. The c4 pawn is loose and at a5 after it, but the a4 pawn's also under attack. So I think Magnus has done well to steady his position, and all eyes really should be on the right-hand side of our screen because Arjun Erigaisi, he is playing rapid chess while Gukesh is playing bullet. And
Yeah, it
in
was
that type of position,
it
come
used
on.
to be classical chess versus rapid, then it was classical versus blitz. Now it's rapid versus hyper bullet, or whatever you want to call it. However you want to slice it and dice it. It's scary for both sides, honestly. Like, white is flirting with checkmate by allowing queen c5. So you have to put your trust in calculation big time. On the other hand, does Arjun have a reasonable alternative to gf? Like, maybe not, because black is very much threatening f takes g4.
But your move, queen takes b5, threatens c4, and you're opening up the fifth rank, and that could be a disaster for the black king.
Why did I think g takes f5 was the computer recommendation? Maybe it's not.
Oh, I think it's probably also a good. I don't know, but it also looks like a good move. I
It
think
is.
That's
It is also decent, apparently.
well, that's why Arjun is paused because queen takes b5 followed by c4 is probably just difficult for black to meet, even if there is some way to hold on. It just seems really challenging, right? Like there's queen g5, queen e5, knight coming to f6 after that. Yikes.
I thought you said that's why Arjun has pause, and I was like, wait, I can't bear this any longer. It's like that the joke. Bear walks into a bar and he says, "I'll have a gin and tonic." The bartender's like, "Why the pause?" The bear says, "I was born with them."
Oh my goodness. I thought you were going to make some kind of.
I have a bad joke for every occasion. I mean, it's the treasure chest is bottomless.
Well, the ellipses are out in the chat. They really don't approve of your bad pun that time.
Draw agreed, and I was about to say, like, just when the popcorn has finished popping and the coffee has finished pouring and the click clack of the seatbelts has finished fastening, that's when. But keep those seatbelts fastened, keep that popcorn popping, because we will get an Armageddon. And I just
We
said a
will
lot
indeed.
for no reason. I just said a lot of
Hey,
words.
we'll get that Armageddon in about 20 minutes. That's usually when they start those Armageddon matches after the classical game is ended, giving the players a little bit of a break. But why don't we then focus all of our attention on this Origin game against Gukesh, because there's so many variations possible here. Not too much happened in terms of special moves there at the end between Magnus and Hikaru. A draw felt like the fair result. Hikaru will kick himself for his poor play after the opening stage. Magnus will be upset that he squandered that advantage. And by the way, Ju and Jun won with black in Armageddon against Sarah Kadem. Too much was happening for us to get to all of the games, but it was a walk on the wild side for the Black King, and it escaped successfully. And Ju and Jun wins that game in the end.
Queen trade in the meantime by Gukesh. A queen trade, and if you take with the bishop, white is relying on this fork, but has Arjun underestimated e takes d5? Is that the secret sauce for Gukesh? Is he close to saving this game?
That's incredible.
What? Are you kidding me?
To find that kind of resource where white is up a pawn, if we just do some quick math, but the pawns are doubled and isolated. So it's not really much in the way of an extra pawn. And d4 followed by b4, I believe that's the threat, if I'm not mistaken.
Wow. And suddenly, like, that pawn, well, the pawns have been unstoppable today. That pawn might very well be unstoppable. Wait, what does white actually do here to counteract the threat? Do you have to, like, take emergency measures and get the knight to d7 or something?
I think that makes perfect sense. Knight f6,
Unbelievable.
king f7, knight d7. Wow.
Unbelievable. He goes king f3. But okay, let's not pretend this is easy. 20 seconds for Gukesh, and he's one mistake away from erasing this narrative entirely.
Wait, so d4, pawn takes b4, the white king gets back in time.
Yeah, so d4 has to be played, otherwise king e3 was the end of the game.
But king e3 now,
Okay, b3, king d2, b2, king c2.
that's winning for white.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm still not seeing it. Bishop e2 doesn't really help. I mean, you can make a dumb tactical move at some point.
And there's a big problem, Danya, that like let's say black tries eventually to bring the king to f6, like the white knight goes to g3, and if the king gets to f6, knight e4 check, there's a fork
I
on
don't
d6
see it.
game.
I don't see the draw here. I mean, I'm sure that probably the other shows are freaking out here. I don't see it yet. It's not freak out time just yet. Maybe black has a fortress. Maybe that's the point.
That's incredible. A fortress exists here that's like knight g3 right now. This is my point. You can't go king f6 because
Right.
knight e4 check and there's a fork on d6.
So let's say knight g3, I go bishop d5, and
King,
knight e4 even there. I mean, no, but king d3. Yeah, knight g3, bishop d5, king d3.
and then
Then
king
king
f6.
f6. Huh. I'm 2 pawns
And
down
then-
and pretending that nothing's like the matter.
Is there some kind of like no, I don't see it.
No, then knight f1 after king f6.
Ooh, knight f1's really nice. That's such a good illustration that white is up essentially. I mean, there's two extra pawns right now, but they're two separate passers. And if you lose the f5 pawn but trade knight for bishop, the black king can't stop both, and the white king will go scoop up the b4 pawn. So that's a really nice line with the knight retreating back to f1 with a really devastating effect.
I honestly feel, just from my instincts here, I mean, unless there's a forced draw that I'm missing, unless there's some miracle way to eliminate all of white's pawns at once, if the draw is a matter of like finding only moves, kind of like Fabi needed to find against Hikaru yesterday, with the greatest admiration of Gukesh's resilience thus far, and it has been nothing short of incredible and worthy of admiration. I'm a little bit skeptical that he's going to be able to continue this, ad infinitum.
I I guess here's a question for you, Danya, since you're a bullet brawler and just an absolute blitz wizard. Do you think now is the time where Arjun should just start playing quickly?
I think he will start playing. I mean, knowing Arjun, he will. And just as you say that, isn't it? The timing has been divine.
But there's not much time left for Gukesh. He needs to find a move. King f6 is bad because 94 check. He goes king to e7, and I see the bar. It's going up a little bit on the live board over there.
And back down to
What
0.
what's the way forward?
94. 94, you have to be careful about that move because if you put the knight on e4, I'll put this on the analysis board really quickly. Like, you have to be very careful about this type of scenario because if you move the knight back, you allow black's king to step forward and start snapping away the pawns. And if you go king c2, you actually lose because at the end of the line, black's only remaining pawn has the good kind of promotion square. And that's a problem because this knight, if it's not hopping onto e4, the only other path is like through h1, but black's king constantly maintains access to the f6 square. This actually might be a fortress.
Whoa, but what about king d2? Like, let's say we start by bringing the king closer.
Uh-huh.
What is black's next move?
Yeah, because king f6 allows knight e4 is your point, I guess.
Yes.
I'm not actually convinced that that's winning, but that's a separate story. Like king f6, knight e4, king f5, knight d6, king f4, knight c4, king e4. No, that's got to be winning.
I believe that's winning, but it obviously requires some calculation, and Gukesh doesn't have time to calculate, so he probably wouldn't go for that line.
He doesn't have time to lace his shoes up or, say the prayer that he's probably been saying the last couple moves. So knight,
So
wait, king d2.
Yes, kind of like a waiting move.
Okay, so what if I wait with my bishop? What is your ultimate aim? Like bishop, where do I wait? Because if I go bishop to d5, you allow potentially the knight to step back or the king to step forward. I'm not clear on how the waiting strategy should proceed. Yeah, I probably would go bishop d5.
But then we get back to that position, right? Bishop d5, king d3,
King
and
f7.
king f6 is met by but knight f1.
Oh, still knight f1, even king f7, knight f1. Yeah, you just get the knight around to e3. So what we're learning is that you probably have to keep the bishop planted on c4. Which means shuffling the king between f7 and e7.
No, but then I'll go knight king d2. The whole point is I can't get away with some of these plans with knight e4 because of what you said with b3, b2. But if my king's already on d2,
yeah,
I'm going knight e4 next.
Yeah, and bishop d5, you already have king d3. This has taken me like 5 minutes to even figure out why a move is wrong. Gukesh has 14 minutes to make a move.
Yeah, this is really difficult. But this is kind of why I was asking you, Danya, is should Arjun make some kind of quick decision? And now that we have the luxury of time, let's go through that variation you mentioned with king d2, king f6, the piece sacrifice. Is that just a draw, or is it winning for white?
Yeah, what we're talking about, folks, I know that people are... First of all, my Twitch chat keeps freezing, which is really annoying, but this is what we're talking about. And at the end of the line, black somehow miraculously eliminates the last center pawn. Yeah, try evaluating this with 14 seconds. I couldn't evaluate this in 14, I don't know, years.
Well, it's a table-based position, so, I'm just going to throw that on my
screen. We're going to evaluate it in 15 nanoseconds.
It says it's a draw.
Wow.
But once you have the answer, great. But to figure that out live...
Yeah, it's a draw, obviously, Robert. I mean, come on. Like, damn. Who are these clowns trying to pretend that they know something about Gukesh's position?
It does make sense, though, because knights are notoriously terrible at stopping passed pawns, and the black king will just... Well, actually, how does this work?
Well, what do you do? Like, I take the pawn, and then I just, sail back to...
So, knight a5.
Yeah, king d4.
Knight b3.
And king e4.
Okay, king e2.
But how are you going to, make all progress ultimately?
I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out, where we go from here.
Well, I can dance all day.
So king g2, you're going to go
back.
Where? King h3?
I mean, I'm going to like. Oh shoot! This loses. Unbelievable. Because of king
Yeah,
g4 probably. I should go to f3 maybe. No, that
okay,
also
king.
loses.
Yeah, I'm not really worried once my king gets free. I'm worried if you can just keep my king kind of in a box.
You know what's crazy? You could maybe go knight c1 here, and it's sort of like Zugzwang.
Yeah, exactly.
Ah, so annoying. Okay, moves are being made.
Oh,
We should be
oh,
cognizant.
oh, uh-oh. King d6 was played,
He
and I
didn't
see
go
the
to
eval
f6.
bar
How
go
did he
up.
miss? How did Gukesh? I mean, I understand his commentator that's washed up getting this wrong, but how did the world champion not figure this out in 10 seconds?
Oh, is what's about to happen this, Danya? So if knight e4 check,
Mm-hmm.
king d5,
Mm-hmm.
and now king e3, because
Yep.
b3 can be met by both knight c3 check is available, but also I'm wondering about f6
f6.
exactly.
F6,
Oh,
king
f6
c,
definitely works.
king c6, and then king
But
d2
then,
simply.
yeah, the king. Oh no, because then b3. Oh, sorry,
No, but
b2
b2,
rather.
king c2, and then I have
They
f7
should
at the end of the line.
we should show that because it's like it's what we
Well,
talked about
Arjun
before.
Erigaisi going to show us, I think,
Wow.
and Robert Hess showed Arjun Erigaisi through your.
No, you showed me. Wow.
Okay, king
I mean, this
e3.
is this is persistence. Like it's such a difficult position for Gukesh. I know people are like, "Oh, how could he blunder?" It was such a tricky position there, and the end game of knight and pawn versus king and two pawns that would go into Devretsky manual.
This will go into like this, like the 50 endgame positions of all time if they follow down the path that you've prescribed. The yellow brick road beckons after f6. What if you go king to e6? That's the move we haven't discussed. Oh, just f7?
That-
No, king e7.
oh, you're brilliant. You're really brilliant with not
I'm
taking that pawn.
unworthy of such.
You take every
Wait,
pawn
f6,
available, but not
king
that pawn.
e6, f5. I have. This apparently is wrong. How can f6 be wrong? That's insane. How
King
does.
d7.
Oh, and he's played it. He's played the move. How and Arjun just cannot resist. Your hand just reaches for that pawn.
And Gukesh down under 20 seconds. I mean, he needs to find king e6,
Red pill,
f5
blue
check,
pill.
king d7. Are you kidding me?
He's got to avoid the mind square. He's got a 50% chance. And he goes for the right square. And Arjun might have just forgotten about king d7. He might have considered only king c6 as a serious option. What the WT fill in the blank?
Oh man. So f5, king d7,
King
king
d2.
d2,
B2?
b2,
No, knight c5.
king e8,
King c2.
king f7.
Knight d7. Bishop b5. Knight e5. Unbelievable. That's a draw.
I think
White's
it's a
going to
draw,
lose
but
the f pawns.
White still has the d pawn.
Yeah, then you have to draw that, which is it is there's a big difference in it being a draw and Gukesh will draw that. Those are two very different sentences, as I think everybody watching has learned.
Wow. What a game that we have here. And in some ways, it reminds me of that game between Wei Yi and Gukesh at the Olympiad,
Oh yeah,
where
which we commentated.
where Wei Yi should have, in air quotes, made a draw, but it was very difficult, and Gukesh was able to win that game. Still winning chances in this one for Arjun Erigaisi, but now he's also down into some time trouble, but it's up to Gukesh to find every accurate choice.
And they're going again down the line that we discussed. So, here's the point, folks. We've already talked about this tactic. King c2 allows bishop d3, and we can only talk about black being winning. So white has the intermediate check on c5, but this helps the king cross the Rubicon over to f7, at which point white is going to drop, we think, potentially both the f pawns, because anytime the knight tries to protect the f6 pawn, the bishop steps back either to d5 or to b5, and pries the knight away, with white's king busy trying to surround that pawn.
Okay, so King C2 is coming, King F7,
will happen for sure.
King takes B2, King takes F6. There's like Knight E4 check again.
Yeah, that's the thing.
How is this equal?
Maybe you need to start with bishop d5. Bishop d5 here. But then knight d7, and there's another fork if you
Yeah,
go bishop
what?
c6.
How is this
Bishop
equal?
b5? He goes to f1.
Oh!
No! He's gonna get forked on g3. He's gonna get forked on g3. Unreal. So
Okay,
does Arjun
we
play
could
king
talk.
c3? How does he win this?
That's a great question. We'll talk about what could have been done to save the game, but it's a ridiculous sequence. What can you just play d5 now? By the way,
Yeah, nobody. That's a great question. I think you absolutely can. He lost sight of the target. Bishop h3,
d5.
d6. You push it through by a tempo.
Yeah, but so d5, king f6, d6.
Bishop f5.
Yeah, no, the pawn's going too
Wins.
fast, isn't
It's
it?
winning. It's winning. It's not easy, but I think d5 is winning.
Wow. What a game this has been. It's been a treat to watch. It's probably not been a treat to play for Gukesh, who's going to be very unhappy with the outcome. I think now it's pretty clear if d5 is played that there doesn't feel to be as much light because Danya what was able to give black a draw in the previous example when white was up a knight was the presence of that b pawn. Without that b pawn, knight and h2 pawn against h7 pawn is winning for white if that's what is to occur.
By the way, knight e4, knight g3 is also winning. Oh, and I think bishop d5 was the drawing move, and knight d7, bishop to e4. But I'm just
Bishop
spitballing.
e4, I mean, yeah, what a concept because black is still going to temporarily be down two pawns and there's a past d pawn there. That's just asking for so much with no time.
And so heartbreaking how close he's come both times. Like, he even understood the concept, did Gukesh, of not taking on f6. He understood that's what he had to do. He just didn't have the time to figure out where to put his bishop. You could even imagine him holding the bishop up in the air, trying to frantically choose the square. We talked about the bad sides of the knight in the endgame. The good side is that anytime you've got time pressure, you want to be the side of the knight.
Yeah, he's staying away from forking distance, or so he thought. But now the d pawn runs free, and that's the big problem because bishop d5, as you mentioned, Danya, knight d7, it looked worrisome. You couldn't kick that knight out of d7, at least not very easily. So this is an understandable mistake, and it's really been caused by that time trouble. And now it's
30
Arjun
seconds.
he's got to find d5, but there are probably other winning moves, and he's
Yeah, this
played
is
knight
also
to
this is
e4.
the sort of Soviet schoolboy method because you just get the knight to g3 and you're up two pawns because black simply can't afford the pawn endgame, and you just go king c3. And I think Gukesh is going to resign here, although in the time scramble you basically just keep playing as long as you can. And what a clinical heads-up move by Arjun. Amazing stuff.
h4 just to keep the king out of there, and then as you said, white can go king c3, king b4, king c5. Use the dark squares, push your second extra pawn. The black king, it's helpless. You know, as you mentioned, bishop h3 takes f5 is a loss because the king and pawn in game is a win for
That's it.
white.
And now you close your eyes and, so easy your pet cat could do it. Your pet Aragaisi could do it. Who doesn't have pet Arjun?
I mean, that would be, helping me become a better chess player. And such a nice, both these players are incredibly kind human beings. But Arjun Aragaisi, I mean, this win is huge for him in his career because there's going to be a rivalry for years to come. But thus far, it's been all Arjun in their head-to-head.
This tournament has been awesome. I mean, they've just come out all guns blazing. Every chamber has been filled. And, relatively speaking, the quality of the chess has been astonishing. How Gukesh managed to navigate the minefield for so long, both games, only to lose and to fall at the last obstacle. All credit to Arjun, though. I think our storyline might not be the one that is officially adopted, and much can be made of Arjun's objective squandering of his advantage, but he won because he was the better player this game, and he won deservedly.
And, there's much that's been said and will continue to be said about the head-to-head. They will play many more games in their fantastic futures. But at the moment, Arjun Aragaisi, 6 wins. Gukesh, 0 in their head-to-head. So that age difference, maybe something in the style that causes Gukesh problems. But Arjun is just an absolute force when he plays against the world champion.
Yeah, and the world champion, of course, continues to struggle. His struggles are real. We've celebrated his effort, but you get a big fat 0 on the cross table, and that hurts. There's no way around it. Yeah, he had the tough draw. He had the two blacks. He's going to have the white pieces tomorrow. But as we have seen from Wei's catastrophic loss to Fabi, the white pieces do not shelter you from the bloodshed that this tournament has provided to tens of thousands of captive fans.
Danya, can you quickly bring up the game between Anna Musichuk and Humpy Koneru because
Yeah.
that game is winding down, and as soon as it ends, we can actually rewind a little bit and just show you a very critical mistake that Humpy made because in the current position, it is winning for White, who has an extra queen,
Oh, this is
and
too easy. This is way too easy for a player of her caliber.
yeah, this is a really big issue for Humpy, and the way she lost this is gonna, I think maybe some kind of, I don't know the right word for it, but like a makeup for yesterday's game, and Anna Musichuk, who also was pressing yesterday and couldn't quite win, uh, she maybe should have won yesterday, didn't. Humpy Canary definitely shouldn't have won, but did yesterday. This moment here, Danya. Queen takes e4, the liquidation in a position when you're down a pawn in an endgame. I think we can understand, or at least we can explain the mistake. These double e pawns, is that really a passed pawn? But as the game continued right here, it looks like Humpy just missed that this is a losing endgame for black. King f3. Then this king can wrap itself around at the right moment to d4 because king e6, king f4 would have been a problem.
That's
And there
beautiful.
is a
Look
bit.
at that. Just back in the Danse Macabre results in only one player dies at the end, and it's black.
Yeah, that's really sad to transition into this queenless position just to lose by that little dance right there.
So Humpy tried to get some extra moves, actually very inventive. Well, clearly, this is not what she planned, and this is completely losing. Probably many different ways to win. Anna calculated out the pawn race and concluded that with the presence of these pawns, the game is over. And we have,
Wait,
yeah.
do you think that Humpy might have missed that there was a check when the pawn promoted? I
But
know it's really,
it
really
can't be the
deep.
only win here, though. There must be King f4 has to be winning also. I'm sure this is also completely. I'm probably actually much easier than what Anna did.
Ah, yes, that's very simple.
So Anna went for the pizzazz and the calculation and was rewarded with a full 3 points on the cross table with this creative Norway chess scoring. Speaking with points on the cross table, we have one more chapter to be written as soon as Magnus and Hikaru decide to write it.
So that's a good lesson, everybody, of why you do not trade when you're down material. The liquidation resulted in a loss. That is unfortunate for the many Humpy Conero fans,
And
but for the Musichuk fans, that was welcome. And we're welcoming this Armageddon game, Danya, where white gets 10 minutes, black gets 7. Wait, why is Magnus not made a
there
move?
we go. Yeah, he was like 10 seconds, like 50% of your time in an Armageddon. And we remind people that there is still increment that kicks in at move 41, but this time it's only a 1 second increment. So you cannot rely on that really for anything meaningful. You have to keep time on your clock if you're the player with less time, which in this case is Magnus.
And
Okay,
we have an
yes.
opening here that is very solid from the black side. So Magnus, he is fantastic in these Armageddons where black only needs a draw. So he is playing a safe and sound variation. Donnie, what do you make of this opening so far? Do you like the decision by Hikaru, or do you feel like Magnus should be content just playing a ever so slightly worse position, at least according to the evaluation bar?
I'm definitely not a specialist here with either side. I remember that Gukesh actually had this against Ding and played this dazzling, almost novelty rookie one on the 7th move. Hikaru's not looking for adventure here in the opening. He's looking for a playable, relatively non-theoretical position that takes Magnus out of his comfort zone. Unfortunately, when your comfort zone extends to every position in chess, that becomes very hard to do. And we see here that Magnus has, again, just seems to know where the pieces, like they just gravitate toward the right squares, except then I sit down to play myself and the gravitational force somehow disappears.
Yeah, it always feels that way. And in this position here, Danya, knight b to d7, bishop f4, the response. I think we could see a knight coming to b6, maybe the f6 knight coming to d5 at the right moment, offering some trades. And I think Magnus is, happy to have the ability to stabilize, but I think Hikaru's doing the right thing as well. And there's not too many trades that he's offering. He wants to keep some complication here.
Yeah, I mean, Black is happy with the outcome of the opening. White's got slightly more share of the center, one could say, but Black has no targets, good develop. I mean, this is such a typical move for these structures. Just plant a knight on d5. Generally, I think White meets it with bishop d2. What you're not going to see is a trade on d5 because with the knight, White would throw the winning chances out with the bathwater.
Yeah, the queen would recapture, could recapture as well. And then if the queen moves out the way from b3, bishop e4 to follow. So the bishop comes to e5. Danya, you seemed skeptical about that choice. What do you think the black should do to meet this offer of a bishop trade?
Honestly, just like knight takes c3 and bishop e4. I personally find, those positions, yeah, like maybe White gets to eliminate the fianchetted bishops, but when the minor pieces start disappearing, again, like the winning chances start to follow them off the chessboard. My vote is for bishop e4. A much better chess player is actually sitting at the board and might also play queen d5. Either way, I think Hikaru might have to rely heavily on the clock here.
You predicted Magnus's move, just like you predicted Moist Critical versus XQC. So you are the prophet. That move received a question mark. I think that's harsh. I do see that the evaluation bar next to the live board, the smaller board, is going a little bit up for White. But I think it's a very practical decision that didn't require much thought. And that's good news when you start down 3 minutes on the clock in an Armageddon game.
And maybe it's connected to this typical idea a2, a4. I was only really thinking about c4, which does blunder a pawn. Rook a to c1 instantly, just out of a cannonball. And I actually think Hikaru is insisting on carrying out this pawn advance. And what he's trying to do is he's trying to meet the capture on d4 with the move c5. And if the b7 pawn falls, right, the leaning tower piece is going to come crashing down. What incredible understanding by Hikaru. And apart from everything else, I was about to call him Magnus, Robert. It's like when I started calling Levy Wesley. This is a time sink for Magnus. He has a concrete threat to deal with, and that's going to take him valuable seconds as we watch them disappearing off his clock and we watch Hikaru's original time advantage only expanding past 3 minutes.
Magnus wanted to play queen d5 to offer a trade of queens to try to use that light square diagonal to his advantage, but now queen d5 is met by c4 as you're indicating. c4 too soon would backfire because bishop takes knight on f3 followed by queen takes d4. Could be a problem, but if queen d5 you're inviting c4 with tempo, and wow, Magnus takes, I would say, pretty drastic measures here, Danya. He plays c5 himself. The point being that d takes c5, the knight drops back to d7, the bishop on e4 protects that loose pawn, or formerly loose pawn, I should say, on b7.
But as they say in Russian, you don't do that out of a good life. Like, you don't do that because things are looking good. You're doing that almost out of desperation. I'm actually not seeing it if White plays like queen b4. Yeah. Like, is Magnus going to trade to earn a tempo? No, he's going to maneuver the knight to f6.
Wow, this is some same-ish type stuff, isn't it? Where you give White that extra pawn there on the queen side, also in the Nimzo. But the point is that those double isolated pawns, queen c7, rook a or f to c8, depending on what happens, even b6 at some point, right, Danya? You give up a pawn, and what do you get when you're down a pawn? Open files. That could be very useful. So we're seeing the start of what will be a defense for Magnus, but maybe a manageable one.
And of course, Magnus has played enough Armageddon and Bullet and non-increment chess to know when to speed up. He's just stepped on the gas pedal there. The last 3 moves he's played instantly. This is some 7-head defensive technique. C5 wasn't just on my radar, not on my radar. It was just like not even on my radar's radar. Like, it wouldn't be probably in the top 10 list of moves. At the same-ish time, Hikaru's somehow maintaining his time advantage. He's still up a pawn. He can't be too unhappy at the way things are progressing here, but he has to find new problems to keep posing Magnus. Because Magnus isn't just going to freeze.
But c6, e5 kicks that knight out of there. So I don't see how White is overly thrilled about that, but you do gain access to the d6 square. And in these types of positions, actually it was Yasser who was really instrumental in some of my knowledge gains, where he was saying that, the square, And he really was focusing on that. And he was saying that that was something that Karpov was so good at, was like knowing how to take
Karpov.
advantage of vulnerable squares. And speaking of vulnerable ones, Bishop E6 is hilarious. It is like provoking a, please, I hung my bishop. Oh no,
Oh
knight
no,
takes
my
E6
bishop.
would be a
Oh no, my queen,
masterful
actually.
royal fork of just amazing proportions. But I think that Bishop E6 is it's funnier than it is strong.
Yeah, I mean, I was actually just I was intending it in a utilitarian fashion to defend the a2 pawn, but I agree. Like anytime black moves the queen, you basically have to then move the bishop. And again, there's this e7, e5. I wouldn't go so far as to call it a threat, but it's a nasty prospect. And you called it a while ago. These pawns, you'd almost rather not be up a pawn here. Like the responsibility that comes with to babysit your isolated pawns is really annoying. And there goes Hikaru's time advantage. It's dwindled now down to 1 minute, and it's going to dwindle further if he doesn't see a clear way to maintain some life in this position.
And we've said it every single time we've seen Armageddon, though, that 1 second increment over the board is not a lot. It's hard to rebuild your clock. And so for Magnus, the best thing that's happened is he's kept almost 4 minutes of time. And for Hikaru, who needs to win, a draw is the equivalent of a loss in Armageddon for the player with the white pieces. Where is that win going to come from? Bishop e6, the more that we talk, the more that I think about it, I actually like that decision because the bishop retreating to b3, it allows white to keep that extra pawn.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes what you need is something unexpected, something that's going to take your opponent out of. Again, I use the term comfort zone too many times, but Magnus is comfortable right now. I think he knows that he's in control of the game, and you need to take the control out of your opponent's grasp, and a move like bishop e6 might be the only thing that allows you to do that. And that's it.
But
The
he's
time advantage has been wiped off the board.
Yeah, he's been paused for
Blocked.
such a long period of time. But he's really just struggling to come up with a move here, and that's the worst thing that can happen is when you freeze and now you need to win the game and you no longer have that 3 minute time advantage. It's not even, any advantage whatsoever. It's a deficit at this point.
Deficit, and Emba saying Hikaru's fallen asleep. Note with Dubov Neiman was earlier today. We're doing Norway chess. Yeah, he's thinking how he's going to introduce his Rika. There goes the queen, and that is, again, when you think for like 3 minutes and have to play queen back to b2, obvious sign that things have gone wrong here. I don't even know where or when, but they have, and I'm still lobbying for bishop e6.
Bishop e6, you're coming up with the same tactic. Rook takes d4. It looks like it removes the quote unquote guard of the tactic, but c takes d4 opens up an attack of the rook on c1 to the queen on
Ooh.
c7. So it's funny how there's tactics met by a tactic, which is really a potential blunder.
And look at rook a5. That was pre-moved by Magnus. Just a statement. Like, the move itself is a statement move. The speed at which he played it is a statement in and of itself. I saw what you were planning. I had something planned. I'm always one step ahead. You come at the king, you best not miss. And I'm saying that to Magnus as well, because he is coming at white's king here. But he is determined to prove that he is still King Magnus, even if he's not the world champion.
Remember that time then that white more or less played a Catalan and had a fianchetto bishop, and now it's the black bishop on e4 that is causing some serious problems for the white king. H4 played by Hikaru, that looks incredibly risky. Can't that black queen go queen d7 to h3?
Yeah, that this is the definition of the cure is worse than the disease. Like this move.
Actually, how do you stop that?
Whoa, knight g4. What a strange move by Magnus. Instead, he almost plays positionally here rather than continuing his strategy. f3, obviously, he intends bishop takes c2 and knight e3. So that's sort of his tactical justification. But he allows moves like knight e3 even. Honestly,
Ugh.
I wasn't the one who steered the ship into the sewage.
Ugh.
Ugh.
Knight a3. F5 now for sure, right? Just F5, F4.
Wow. All right, Misha.
Maybe it's too risky. I mean, White's playing there on the
G5 by
G5.
Geller. I mean, wow. I like it. Magnus
That is a
gift
move.
me the pawn.
Does he sacrifice the exchange
Actually,
tall style?
rook b5 is. I know I'm going for these cheap moves, but I mean, this actually might earn you a very important tempo because it sets up queen takes c4. At the same time, like I'm now worried about black's king because need I
Ooh.
remind you, you come with the king, best not miss.
Stop it. Stop it.
I'm balancing
You.
on a thin wire here.
Oy, oy, oy. Okay, so the question is rook b5 or rook c5. Those moves hit the knight in different ways, but also g takes h4. Can I sacrifice in
Wow.
exchange, not my pieces? And Magnus says, well, these are mine, but I will still do that. Wow, he gets a brilliant symbol.
Well, just like you, Magnus's enthusiasm, Hikaru hasn't curbed it, and
Oh, goodness.
wow, that is going absolutely nowhere. Black's H pawn, meanwhile, was going all the way up to H2, and this is Hikaru is in backpedal mode. Everything is falling, but Magnus has to actually find the crushing blow here. Is it just like Rook C5, or is it something more adventurous than Bishop D5 E4?
Oh, rook c5, there could be knight d2. That at least requires calculation because there is a fork of minor pieces over there on the king side. But I like the look of the rook c5 as well. I'm not sure if the white king will survive, even if you do steal a piece.
Honestly,
Ugh,
knowing Magnus, he's the kind of guy who's just gonna go Bishop A8 and rely on that bishop to move mountains. Watch him do
pretty
that.
nice, pretty nice looking move, bishop a8, because queen c5 check is always there.
Like
And
I
oh,
said, Magnus
okay.
is about to give a check on c5. Exactly what I said. Predicted Magnus's move again.
You are very, very impressive.
Is there a check on f2 to follow up the first course?
So such a complicated position. Bishop a8 still looks quite appealing.
Oh yeah, now you can't even take the knight because the king is, well, involuntarily by force stepped into a pin. Well, the pawn is now not stepped into a pin, but is now pinned
Okay, so
by the
bishop
piece
a8
that's
looks
pinning
good.
it that it's attacking.
My head kind of hurts looking at this position because there's so many captures possible.
Well, Magnus has 50 seconds to find an advil and actually make a decision. And with a second increment, this is a serious factor now. He can't fall in love with the tactics here. He just needs to make a decision, I think, by the time he reaches 30 seconds.
They're only on move 29, so even getting to move 40 to get that additional 1 second
Yeah.
bonus time. Oh, good luck,
Is he
dude.
freaking out?
He's spending way too much time. He wants the perfect solution here, but it's perfect is the enemy of the good.
Well, he better find checkmate here. 25 seconds. He's in the territory where he must deliver mate in like the next 5 seconds. The next 5 moves, that is. Otherwise, he might not make it to move 40.
Wow, so he goes
Unreal.
bishop a8. Is there some kind of e4 tactic available for black?
Oh my! This is like move for move. That's how close it's going to be. We saw this in the World Championship. E4 shuts down the bishop. He takes the rook instead, and E4 is white going to live to tell the tale.
Wow. So he makes a mistake because he's got no time. It was self-induced time trouble.
Or
E4
not.
by white. HG, what's the
Wow.
point here? If
FG bishop E4. Bishop comes back from the dead to deliver checkmate.
Oh, that's crazy. And queen e7. That queen can wrap itself up, go to h4, and well, I think that's going to be a difficult thing to meet for the white king.
Queen G2. Go for the flag. 20 seconds to make 10 moves just to reach the 1 second increment. And not to mention, Magnus still has to navigate a bunch of landmines here. He's still down in exchange. C4 hitting E5.
Oh,
Queen
goodness.
trade will be rejected. Queen H2 maybe.
Although, if you reject the queen trade, you probably are going to get in some trouble with the queen f4. Wow, what's going on? Those pass pawns are scary.
So is the threat of rook B2. So is the fact that Magnus has 10 seconds for 2 more moves. Is he losing control of the game?
It looks
C6,
like he is.
C6.
Oh, c6, rook d6, c7, rook 6, rook b6 at the end.
You come at the king, and he does not miss.
Wait, but rook b6, rook takes c8 against queen, rook b2? Is there some?
Queen
No,
D8.
queen
No,
h8.
no, no. That's got to be
Yeah.
winning. But we're
Wow.
saying that rook G to C1 might be a cleaner win. And now rook B6.
That's so nasty.
That is chess erotica there.
Oh, that is just gross. And that is amazing stuff. Hikaru Nakamura wins, Danya. That was a self-induced error from Magnus, but credit to Hikaru for staying alive long enough to pose enough issues for Magnus to deal with, for Magnus to then sink into time trouble, and that was just not what Magnus wanted, but everything that Hikaru could ask for.
Somewhere from his grave, the magician of Riga just nodded in approval at the magician of Sunshine, Florida. And it's nothing but sunshine for Hikaru. There's not much of it in Stavanger at this time of year, I think, but what a finale. And just to make Magnus freeze like that, I think it takes a Hikaru. He writes another chapter in the never-ending book of adventures that these two gladiators, these two dueling players, these two greats seem to be endlessly writing chapter after chapter. And he's like, I'm tired of the premature resignation. This is what I want chess fans to be talking about. And they'll be talking about it all right.
Danya, go back to move 29 after King H1 for Hikaru. I remember on the live board, the evaluation bar was suggesting that Black was winning, but look at the time, 1 minute 36 seconds, and then make one more move.
Over a minute on Bishop A8. Yeah. That's insanity.
A minute 12 seconds to leave himself with just 24, and that is just not what gets it done in Armageddon chess. He probably could have made a quick move, and Hikaru didn't have enough time himself in a blitz game to figure all this out. But yeah, that's just not going to get the job done. Is a minute and 12 seconds.
Oh, look at this. F, G, F, E, and B5. What? This was the best line? Okay, this is literally... This isn't even harder than freestyle chess. This is some sort of like alien chess is what this is. This was winning for Black. And look at this.
What?
I mean, White just can't stop the
so
can't stop
let me get this
progression of the pawn.
Let me get this straight here. So White is down, Black is down a rook and a bishop for one pawn, if I'm counting correctly. But the White King has just made it.
B5, I mean, I know a certain someone who would jump on the he would bring the Concorde out of retirement, fly to Stavanger, and personally write the individual who played this move out of the tournament.
No, that's just
this
not
is the
real.
one time I would agree. That is just ridiculous. Like, why is this even necessary to get the E3 square for the queen?
Like, I guess so. That seems to be the reason why all that was happening. But that's not even because the Queen E3 has like some major threat after it.
No, this is ridiculous. But your point is well taken. I don't want to distract from the important point that you made, which is that if he had played this move in 10, 15 seconds, as he probably wanted to, he probably would have won this game because the practical difficulties facing White are fairly insurmountable here. It's the fact that he left himself with 20 seconds that ultimately did him in. But all credit to Hikaru.
Hikaru just didn't go down without a fight. The way that he was able to keep his king alive, just to pose some big questions that Magnus struggled to answer. I mean, he's Hikaru. So what's this, like 4 out of 6.5? No one can get to 6.5.
Yeah, well, the maximum score is 6.
Yeah, I see that there, and
yeah,
I'm just confused.
How do you get to 6.5?
You don't. I don't know what's going on. But anyway,
it's like getting an A when you have like a Eastern European professor. It's like just there as a motivational goal, that nobody will ever reach.
I just can't believe that Magnus spent 1 minute 12 seconds on that turn, because he probably was panicking, trying to find the killer move, but it was a missed opportunity, I think we can call it, for Magnus. But Hikaru is going to be thrilled to score that Armageddon win, to run back to make his YouTube video.
And as as an experienced content creator, Hikaru will say all the right things and make all the right sounds to suggest that, he thinks that Gukesh is a very difficult opponent of the black pieces in the next round. But of the bad choices in this tournament, I feel like Gukesh has a big fat 0. That number I can read. That number I can understand. To face a vulnerable Gukesh who's lost 2 in a row is probably Hikaru's best bet at jumping ahead in this tournament. He's going to play combative chess tomorrow, and it's a real test for the 18-year-old world champion. Can he find that reserve of strength, and can he finally, having gotten the white pieces, show that he is where he is in the chess world for a very good reason, as we know that he is. That
You know,
made
Gukesh,
no sense.
you're all good. You've had a very long day,
Yeah,
but
I
what I was going
have.
to say, Danya, is Gukesh could try to play a peaceful game against Hikaru, and I think that wouldn't be the worst idea. Ooh, thank you,
Five
Owen
subs. Damn,
ED, for
bro.
the yeah, 5 gifted both in both our channels that I can see. Really, really appreciate that. Thanks so much to everybody for the support. It's been awesome. And I just want to say, Danya, that going into tomorrow, Gukesh against Hikaru, Magnus against a vulnerable Wei Yi, who just lost with the white pieces, and Fabiano with white against Arjun Erigaisi. Both of those two players will be thrilled with their performance today. And that's always a fun matchup between two very hungry players. So we're spoiled for sure in Norway chess. And for the women, Humpy, she's going to look to rebound against Sarah Kadem. Lei Ting-jae against Anna Muzichuk, two players who've been in good form. And Ju Wen-jun with white against Vaishali. Vaishali, she was able to draw her game in classical with the white pieces against Lei Ting-jae, but then drew, unfortunately for her, in Armageddon. So Lei Ting-jae gets that match victory. We saw that ending. It was the opposite colored bishops and a nice result for Lei. So, Danya, it's been a great event. Just 2 days in, we still have 80% of the tournament to go. How are you feeling, and what are your final thoughts before we end this show and look forward to tomorrow?
It's amazing how they managed to pack so much. Like, in commentator speak of like a 4.5 hour show, and you deserve all the credit. First of all, thank you for holding down the fort, which you'll do again tomorrow, as I cover the second and final day of Dubov Neiman. But you did a fantastic job. But 4.5 hours, it's not a very long show. Like, we consider this sort of a short show on the shorter side, and yet so much like happens in the span of so little time. We talk a lot about what the chess world gets wrong, what the organizers get wrong, but this tournament gets a lot of things right, and it's managed to keep me essentially holding my breath for most of the round, and that's a pretty big achievement. I'm pretty jaded in the grand scheme of things.
Well, I hope you can take a deep breath. You can relax, maybe do some yoga. You've had a long day commentating in multiple languages. It's been really fun. So many hectic games and some crazy tactics, and then also some amazing end games. So we've been spoiled. I always feel that way, Danya, commentating with you, but also just getting to watch these great chess players. So I'm done for the day. I'm looking forward to seeing everybody tomorrow. Please follow our channels. Come back for more coverage. We will be covering this entire event. So I hope, will want to stop by and at least one more time.
Yeah, I'll be doing a Title Tuesday stream in about an hour and 15 minutes. I'll be going live on my own channel. And for anyone interested in more roundtable discussion of the Dubov Neiman match, as well as for more deserving praising of the greatest commentator in the game, Robert Hess, please feel
No.
free to tune in. But we appreciate everyone's support as we get this little project underway. I'm really, really happy to be where I am and to get to watch the games with you. It's been super fun, and we've got 80% of the tournament still left. So you won't want to miss it. On that note, I will release you, Robert. I think it's time for us to get some food and get some rest, and maybe for most of the viewers to do the same.
Sounds great, Danya. Thanks everybody for stopping.